Hitoshi Nozaki, a 34-year-old man, reflects on his current state. Though people might judge him by his wild appearance, he is now suddenly a stranger in a different world, almost naked and alone inside a forest. The memory of his end surfaces. On his way home, he saw a student in the path of a truck and died saving them. As his life faded, a voice in his head offered reincarnation. The memory is sharp, as is the searing heat of the food he bites into. He recalls waking up to face a girl with pure white hair. She greeted him, revealing herself to be God. She had decided to transport him to another world, offering him a second chance at life. Stunned into silence, he could only watch as she welcomed him, a bright light emanating from her hand. She elaborated on the situation, calling it a pain. She explained that she had a contract and was inclined to protect the image of a god, even if he proved to be a disappointment. He felt a surge of rejuvenation, but also a sense of danger from her presence. She then revealed the world's mechanics. He could level up his skills as much as he desired. The idea of leveling up and living a carefree life filled him with amazement. The god continued, explaining that his skills would transform into new ones, including body repair and work direction, which she called cheats. As he began to protest, she cut him off, declaring it was too much trouble. With a final "see you," she forcefully pushed him, sending him tumbling away into nothingness. His descent ended abruptly, his first sight being the dappled light filtering through a thick canopy of leaves. He stared upward, his eyes wide with disorientation as particles of light drifted down around him. He lay sprawled on the soft, leafy ground, his journey complete. Sitting up, he clutched his head, muttering in frustration about the god who sent him here without even proper clothes. He looked down at his leafy loincloth, forcing himself to calm down. His first priority, he decided, was to understand his surroundings and the rules of this new place, suspecting that things here operate on a system of ranks. He rose to his feet, gazing out at the endless sea of trees. The god had sent him to a truly ridiculous and potentially dangerous location. He determined that finding a water source was his highest priority. But even before that, another thought occupied his mind. In the dense jungle, Hitoshi Nozaki strips bark from a tree, explaining to himself that he's making lumbar medicine. He reflects on his past life, glad he protected his personal rigor, and now shifts his focus to exploration. With renewed determination, he resolves to commit fully to survival. He pushes deeper into the undergrowth, finding the thick foliage a burden to move through. A flicker of doubt crosses his mind as he wonders if it's truly possible to find anything useful in such a wild place. Suddenly, a faint sound catches his attention. He freezes, wondering what it could be, guessing it might be a small animal. He is surprised to realize the sound is coming from somewhere out of sight within the forest. He focuses, listening intently to the strange chirps and calls echoing through the trees. Convinced the sound is real and not his imagination, he immediately begins to move toward its source. His pursuit leads him into a shallow river, his feet splashing through the cool water as he runs along the bank, silhouetted against the shimmering surface. Reaching the water's edge, he cups his hands and drinks deeply. A wave of relief and triumph washes over him, and he throws his head back, shouting in celebration of his success. Nearby, he discovers a massive tree with a hollow at its base and decides it will be his new base of operations. He reasons that the location is ideal, with the river providing a source of food, and notes that it's only a 2-minute walk from the temple where he first arrived. His mind is already working on building a fish trap. To test the local fruit, he methodically applies its juice to a wound on his arm and waits 5 minutes. Seeing no allergic reaction, he deems it edible. He realizes there are many sources of food available. For now, he sits, contemplating a simple tool he has fashioned and pondering what tasks remain. Using a hand drill, he works tirelessly to generate friction. After a moment of intense effort, a spark catches, and a small pile of tinder begins to smolder. He stares in awe at the fledgling flame, amazed that he has successfully made fire for the very first time. Lying down, he plans his next steps, securing long-lasting food and preparing for meat-making. He knows he needs to hunt to get animal skins, but first, he must wait for his wounds to heal. As he contemplates this, a strange, glowing rectangular panel materializes in the air before him. He stared at the interface, his mind racing to comprehend its meaning. The display was simple, showing his status. Level 1, with a single skill listed, Karate. He wondered if this was all he had, just one skill from his past life. A representation of his own back appeared on the screen, causing him to pause in contemplation. Then, a confident smirk spread across his face as he looked forward, a sense of recognition and resolve in his eyes. This was him. In the dense jungle, Hitoshi Nozaki works with grim determination, convinced this is his chance to survive and thrive. He recalls knowledge from his past life, fashioning a crude trap from vines and wood, his focus absolute as he prepares for the harsh realities of this new world. His work is interrupted by the sight of a large, white, rabbit-like creature. He notes its oddly small head, but his senses pick up something else. The creature suddenly bolts, fleeing in terror. He realizes with a start that something is coming. The source of the animal's fear reveals itself. A trio of goblins emerges from the undergrowth. They move with a sinister gait, one of them clutching a small, limp figure in its hand. From his hiding place, Hitoshi gets a clear view of one of the creatures, and his eyes widen in shock. He recognizes it immediately. A goblin, a staple monster from fantasy lore. The realization that he is truly in another world hits him with full force. His shock quickly morphs into a cold calculation. This, he thinks, is a chance to gain experience points. He watches as the goblins begin to move away, heading directly towards the path where he'd set his trap. But his plan is discovered. One of the goblins stops, its head snapping around to stare directly at his hiding spot among the thick vines. Hitoshi freezes, realizing he's been seen. With his cover blown, he knows there is no other option. Deciding he must fight, he leaps from his perch, spear in hand, hurtling down towards the goblins below. He plummets onto the first goblin, his body weight crushing it instantly. As another goblin looks on, he takes a moment to register his first kill. Without pausing, he pivots from the kill and lashes out with a powerful kick, striking a second goblin squarely and sending it reeling. The second goblin shrieks in pain, clutching its head. As it stumbles back, a third, horned goblin steps forward. Hitoshi's eyes narrow. He notes that this one, the third, is also a quick attacker. He forces himself to calm down, analyzing the horned goblin's attack. It's a simple downward swing, leaving the creature wide open. As the club smashes into the ground where he just stood, Hitoshi clenches his fist. He pivots and unleashes a powerful straight punch, driving it forward with a shout. The blow connects squarely with the goblin's face, sending it flying backward. He watches its body fall, confirming to himself that his punch landed cleanly. He did it. Hitoshi Nozaki taunts the last terrified goblin, telling it that attacking from above will only serve to make the blow sink deeper. With a sharp cry, he brings his hand down in a vicious arc towards the creature's head. His hand, formed into a rigid blade, strikes the goblin's skull with devastating force. The impact forces the creature to its knees. Hitoshi stands over it, his body coiled as he presses down, ensuring the end. With a final, sickening crunch, the goblin's life is extinguished. It collapses to the ground. Hitoshi looks on with a grim expression before stepping on its head, confirming for himself that it is over. The scene pulls back, revealing the full extent of the carnage. Hitoshi stands alone in a small clearing, surrounded by the bodies of the goblins he has just slain. He throws his arms to the sky, letting out a triumphant roar. He internally declares himself not a monster, but victorious. The elation is short-lived, however, as he looks at his trembling hand with a sudden pang of remorse, offering a silent apology to his fallen enemies. His reflection is shattered by the sudden appearance of a small, glowing orb. As he stares, perplexed, a colossal, tree-trunk-like leg descends from the heavens, shaking the ground. Looking up in awe, Hitoshi realizes his place in this new reality. A profound sense of freedom washes over him. He is here. He can go anywhere. He could do anything. His true survival has just begun. Deep within a dense, unfamiliar forest, Hitoshi Nozaki runs with purpose, a solitary figure navigating the sprawling wilderness from a high vantage point. He is in pursuit of a strange, lumpy creature resembling a sheep, shouting for it to stop. He is determined not to let his potential meal escape. As he closes the distance, a notification flashes through his mind. He has reached level 8. Instantly, his 5 senses become sharper, allowing him to perceive the creature's center of gravity shifting as it turns to the left. Empowered by this new sensory data and his own improving physical abilities, he lunges forward, triumphantly grabbing the fleeing animal by its hind leg. Having secured his prize, he slings the large, strange beast over his shoulder, satisfied with what he considers a big catch. His hunt successful, his attention shifts to the surrounding flora. He spots a plant he identifies as chili pepper, immediately recognizing its value. He realizes it can be used as an insecticide for sterilization, and even has restorative properties, so he decides to gather as much as possible. Just then, a tremendous roar rips through the forest. The sound startles a pair of nearby goblins, who chatter nervously. The noise interrupts Hitoshi's own thoughts. He had been reflecting on how he'd stopped leveling up from defeating the common goblins, a fact that had worried him for months until his recent hunt. He turns sharply, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. The sheer power of the roar leaves him unsettled, wondering what could have possibly made such a sound. His gaze follows the sound, landing on the 2 small goblins. They are frozen in terror, staring up at a massive, hulking silhouette that has just emerged from the trees, dwarfing them completely. The shadow belongs to an enormous goblin, far larger and more muscular than any he has seen before, clad in crude armor and brandishing a heavy axe. Its face is a mask of brutish aggression. A new, far more dangerous threat has revealed itself. The massive creature's sudden appearance sent a shockwave through the clearing. In response, Hitoshi took an involuntary step back, his bare feet digging into the soft earth. His mind raced as he identified the new threat, a hobgoblin, an evolved form. Below, the smaller goblins chattered nervously, wondering if their larger kin was there to reprimand them for their quarrel. Hitoshi tightened his grip on his knife, but the hobgoblin was not there to mediate. With a brutal display of power, it snatched one of the smaller goblins and violently crushed it, asserting its dominance without a word. The sheer force of the act struck Hitoshi with a terrifying realization. For the first time since arriving in this world, he faced a monster stronger than himself. There was no choice. He turned and fled into the trees. His sudden movement did not go unnoticed. The hobgoblin let out a furious roar, its eyes locking onto him. A single thought echoed in Hitoshi's mind. He had been found. For the first time, he was not the hunter, but the hunted. He sprinted through the undergrowth, a desperate scream tearing from his throat as he put as much distance as possible between himself and the monster. The hobgoblin gave chase. It acknowledged that while the distance was increasing, the human's large body was an obstacle in the dense forest. However, it knew this was a temporary advantage for its prey. Goblins, especially the evolved type, have a sharp sense of smell, making it impossible to truly escape. It concluded that the forest was no longer a safe haven for the human. In other words, they would not give up the hunt. Knowing he was being relentlessly pursued, Hitoshi made his way to a specific, massive tree. He paused before it, his new pack on his back. He offered his thanks to the tree, his first home in this world for the past 3 months, and bid it a final goodbye. With his farewells made, he turned away from his shelter, his face set with grim determination, ready to face the uncertain path ahead. He presses onward through the dense forest, shouldering his makeshift pack and spear. To maintain his strength, he pauses for rigorous training, performing pull-ups on a low-hanging branch. Unseen by him, the pursuing hobgoblin watches from the undergrowth, its teeth bared in a low growl. Sensing he is still being hunted, he scrambles up a sheer rock face and continues his desperate flight through the wilderness. His frantic pace eventually leads him to the edge of a murky, stagnant pool of water nestled in a small cavern. As a bizarre, hammer-headed creature prowls nearby, Hitoshi emerges from the pool, completely coated in a thick layer of mud. He watches the beast depart, realizing with a sigh of relief that the muddy swamp had masked his scent and saved him. The close call leaves him shivering, and a wave of loneliness washes over him as he wishes for someone to talk to. His moment of quiet reflection is shattered by a sudden rustling in the nearby bushes. He freezes, instantly on alert, his mind racing to identify the source. He questions whether it is another strange beast, or, perhaps, a goblin. From within the foliage, a large, curious eye peers out, observing the world. A small, furry creature with large ears is seen from behind, perched atop a rock. Hitoshi remains concealed, watching the small being with caution. His focus on the ground-level creature is abruptly broken. Something else has caught his attention, and he looks up into the treetops with a start, his eyes wide with alarm. In a dense forest, Hitoshi Nozaki comes to a sudden halt. Ahead of him, a young woman with light-colored hair is kneeling on a large rock, seemingly focused on her task. His eyes widen with a mixture of shock and hope. After so long, he has finally found another human. Startled by a sound, the woman looks up from her basket. Her expression shifts to one of pure terror as she sees Nozaki's imposing, wild figure. She recoils, pleading for him not to come any closer, but he can only manage a confused grunt in response. His confusion turns to disbelief as he processes her terrified words. She is calling him a goblin. Before he can react, a monstrous roar echoes through the trees. A grim understanding dawns on him as he identifies the sound, a hobgoblin. He realizes with certainty that the creature's tenacity means it was set on killing him from the moment he entered its territory. His attention snaps back to the clearing, and his blood runs cold. The hobgoblin has seized the girl. He feels a brief moment of relief that she is unharmed, but it is immediately overwhelmed by rage. The hulking hobgoblin glares, its face twisted in fury as it holds the terrified woman. It bellows a challenge, roaring for him to get his filthy hands away from the girl. In response, Nozaki lets out a furious, primal roar of his own. He grabs a thick vine hanging nearby and, with a powerful leap, swings through the air directly at the monster. The hobgoblin sees the attack coming, its massive hand tightening its grip on a crude club. But Nozaki, propelled by gravity and rage, descends rapidly, his body coiled as he prepares to strike. His fist connects with devastating force, smashing directly into the hobgoblin's face. The creature stumbles back, the force of the blow sending it off balance. As it reels, the young woman is thrown from its grasp, while Hitoshi lands his attack complete. He watches, his hand trembling from the impact, as the hobgoblin merely staggers, clutching its face. A look of disbelief crosses Hitoshi's face. He can't comprehend how the creature is still standing after such a direct hit. His attention snaps to the girl on the ground as a smaller goblin suddenly appears beside her. Ignoring the new creature, Hitoshi yells for her to leave him and just run, asking if she's okay and can stand. She stammers an affirmative. The smaller goblin snarls, telling her to go, that anyone will do, even another goblin. Heeding his words, the young woman scrambles to her feet and flees into the woods. With her safely away, Hitoshi turns his full attention back to the recovering hobgoblin, planting his feet to face the towering monster. His expression hardens into a mask of grim resolve. It is the beginning of an unrelenting battle. With his fist clenched, he accepts his fate. There is no choice but to fight. Hitoshi Nozaki stands his ground, sweat beading on his brow. The pressure emanating from the hobgoblin is immense, a palpable threat he likens to facing a bear. The creature glares back, its brutish face a mask of pure aggression. Despite the primal urge to turn and run, he knows he cannot. The image of the fleeing girl flashes in his mind, solidifying his resolve. In response to his defiance, the hobgoblin lets out a guttural roar and charges forward, brandishing its heavy axe. As the creature thunders across the clearing, Nozaki lowers his center of gravity, settling into a deep, stable karate stance. His focus is absolute, his eyes locked onto the approaching behemoth. He quickly deduces that this fight is a matter of speed. The hobgoblin's attacks are powerful, but its motions are too large and telegraphed. As predicted, the monster swings its axe in a wide, downward arc. He dashes forward, moving inside the weapon's reach. His fist connects with the creature's side, but the impact reveals an incredible hardness. A single blow is useless. The hobgoblin is momentarily surprised by the dodge. Nozaki instantly realizes that attacking the thick muscles of its torso is a futile strategy. Pressing the advantage of his proximity, he pivots and drives a powerful punch into the hobgoblin's exposed side, right below its raised arm. The strike lands true. The hobgoblin stumbles back, its face twisting in a silent roar of agony. Seeing the effect, Nozaki bellows in triumph. It worked. He gives the beast no time to recover, immediately following up with another heavy blow aimed at the side of its head. From a safe distance, the young woman watches the brutal, close-quarters combat unfold. With the hobgoblin stunned and its head lowered, Nozaki executes a swift, precise strike, thrusting the tips of his fingers directly into the creature's eye. His attack found its mark. The hobgoblin reeled back, howling in pain as Hitoshi's fingers found its eye. A grim satisfaction crossed Hitoshi's face. The strike was a success. As the creature staggered, Hitoshi analyzed its movements. He realized with dawning concern that its attacks were too chaotic, too unpredictable. There was no discernible pattern to its wild flailing. The beast stumbled away, clutching its ruined eye, while Hitoshi scrambled backward, desperately trying to create distance and reassess the rapidly changing situation. He watched, a bead of sweat tracing its path down his temple. The hobgoblin was swaying, but it wasn't falling. A sense of disbelief and frustration washed over him. He couldn't believe it was still standing. Resetting his stance, Hitoshi glared at the monster, his mind racing. He cursed the creature's sheer resilience, recognizing it as a true beast of this world. His eyes darted to the hobgoblin's injured face, then to its legs. A plan began to form. He concluded that if he had any chance of winning, it had to be a high kick aimed at the head to finish it. Exploiting the opening created by the creature's now limited vision, he lunged forward from its blind spot, launching a powerful kick that connected squarely with the side of its head. Yet, to his utter dismay, the hobgoblin only staggered. It did not fall. A desperate, silent plea formed in Hitoshi's mind, begging for the beast to finally collapse. The plea went unanswered. Instead of falling, the monster's hand shot out, grabbing Hitoshi's airborne leg. With terrifying speed, it pulled him close and sank its teeth deep into his forearm. A raw scream of agony tore from his throat. White-hot pain exploded through him as he felt the crunch of bone and sinew. It felt as if his arm was being bitten clean off. Rage and desperation warred on his face as he cursed the beast, refusing to die in such a place. His screams of agony were cut short by a desperate, instinctive act. With his free hand, Hitoshi jammed a small, hard object deep into the hobgoblin's gaping maw, forcing its jaws open. The last few moments flashed through his mind, his powerful kick connecting with the beast's head, followed by the searing pain as its teeth sank into his arm, pulling him down. He slumped against a tree, his consciousness fading. The fight seemed lost. He looked at the small, red object in his hand, identifying it as an ice sky chili pepper. He noted its intense heat from just a single touch and considered giving up, believing any attempt to make it better would be futile. At this rate, he would simply faint. As Hitoshi wavered, the hobgoblin, its face a mask of shadow and rage, let out a guttural roar, its fury undiminished. The sound jolted him. He looked up at the monstrous form, and a new resolve hardened within him. He would not die here. He was definitely not going to die. The creature bellowed once more, a sound of pure aggression. His determination was absolute. He was not going to die. A memory of the young girl he had seen earlier flashed in his mind, fueling his will to survive. He had to see her again. With trembling hands, he brought the potent chili pepper to his lips. As he sat against the tree, the hobgoblin began to stalk towards him, its intent clear. His eyes shot wide open, a jolt of raw energy coursing through him. The memory of the hobgoblin's teeth crushing his arm was still fresh, but now it was overshadowed by a new, overwhelming sensation. He felt an explosion of fire in his mouth. It worked. The hobgoblin recoiled, clutching its face in agony from the pepper Hitoshi had forced into its mouth earlier. A primal, deafening roar erupted from Hitoshi's own throat as he stomped his foot, empowered by the searing heat. He grits his teeth, channeling the last of his power-induced strength into a single, desperate punch. The blow connects squarely with the hobgoblin's face, crushing its eye socket as dark fluid erupts from the wound. Before the creature can fall, Hitoshi hooks his arms around its torso, heaves its entire body into the air, and executes a powerful suplex. They crash to the ground in a cloud of dust, the impact leaving Hitoshi sprawled on his back, gasping in shock and exhaustion. Lying on the ground beside the motionless hobgoblin, he stares at his own hand. A single, triumphant thought cuts through the haze of pain. He had won, but the victory has drained him completely. He realizes with a start that his body is spent. He can't even lift a finger. As he lies paralyzed, a new sound cuts through the forest silence. A young woman's voice calls out, searching for a goblin-san. His eyes snap open with irritation. He wonders who she could possibly be calling goblin. His annoyance is interrupted when he notices the small, furry creature is now perched on his shoulder, bleeding slightly. His gaze then drifts past the clearing, taking in the sight of a nearby village and a crude wooden hut. Hitoshi Nozaki's eyes open to the sight of an unfamiliar wooden ceiling. His expression is one of dazed confusion as he slowly returns to consciousness. He sits up, a jolt of pain reminding him of his recent battle. Looking around this simple, rustic room, he wonders where he is. His last memory is of fighting the hobgoblin and striking a tree. He considers the possibility that the child he saw earlier might have been the one who rescued him. The realization dawns on him. He is in a human house, lying in a proper bed. The thought is so overwhelming that he buries his face in his hands. After months in this new world, he never imagined he would experience such a comfort again. His gaze sharpens as he inspects the bed, questioning if it belongs to the child's entire family. As his senses take in the simple comfort of the pillow, the door slams open. The young girl from the forest bursts in, her face pale with fright, shouting a single word, "Goblins!" Hitoshi recognizes her instantly, but his first thought is to protest that he hasn't eaten yet. She urgently tells him to get out immediately. Confused, Hitoshi looks out the window and sees a group of people approaching. The girl explains that the villagers are coming for him. When he asks why, she clarifies that they want him to watch over the goblins. The group of villagers arrives, armed with a motley collection of swords and farming tools. A young man with a distinctive mark on his cheek steps forward, raising his sword. He looks directly at Hitoshi and asks if he was the one who helped him. Hitoshi Nozaki awakens in a rustic room. Through a window, he sees a crowd of villagers armed with crude farming implements. A cold realization washes over him as he wonders what he could have done to make them so eager for his death. He turns his intense gaze toward the young woman who had been caring for him. He understands now. They're not just simple villagers. They are here to kill him and take the valuable materials from the hobgoblin he defeated. The woman confirms his suspicion, her voice filled with urgency as she explains that hobgoblin bones and skins are extremely rare and can be traded for a very high price. Outside, the group of villagers is led by a young man with a crescent-shaped mark on his cheek. He calls out for the village pharmacist and tells his companions to wait. Inside, the pharmacist presses a finger to her lips, signaling Nozaki to be quiet. She then turns to the door, pleading with the men to go home and promising she won't let them lay a finger on her patient. The situation grows more chaotic. One of the villagers outside suggests they should just kill Nozaki. Inside, the pharmacist scolds Nozaki for not being concerned for his own safety, revealing a pot of ointment for his wounds. The murmur of the crowd outside continues, with talk of the mayor and a famous figure in the royal capital. Amidst the noise, one villager whispers to another a grim proposal. Kill both of them. Nozaki overhears, his expression hardening. He thinks to himself that patients should be allowed to rest quietly and listen to the pharmacist. The leader with the crescent mark quickly puts a stop to the plotting, placing a hand on his subordinate's shoulder. He reasons that killing the pharmacist would be troublesome later, effectively halting the hostile whispers for the moment. His outward display of reason, however, masks a selfish ambition. In his mind, the leader plots to take the woman and the drug, Nozaki, for himself, provided his father gives permission. He sees this as the path to securing their future. The pharmacist continues to treat a large wound on Nozaki's leg, which trembles from the pain. He questions if she is truly qualified for such a task. She ignores his doubt, instead sincerely thanking him for saving her from the hobgoblins and pleading for him to be careful, as his wound is far from healed. Ignoring her pleas, Nozaki declares he is done resting and tries to push himself up. Both the pharmacist and the village leader outside cry out for him to stop. But his injured body gives out, and he collapses to the floor, cursing in pain and frustration. His strength was failing him far more rapidly than he had imagined, the world threatening to go dark. He knew he was about to collapse. As his consciousness wavered, a fleeting image of himself running through a dark forest surfaced in his mind. Outside, his stirring was met with alarm. A villager cried out that he had woken up, drawing a frustrated curse from another. Inside, the young pharmacist watched him, her expression filled with concern. "Hey, I'm sorry," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I noticed." The villager leader, his face contorted with rage, grips the young pharmacist's arm. He accuses her of deceiving them, his voice a low growl as another villager watches the tense confrontation. From a hidden vantage point among the trees, Hitoshi Nozaki watches the scene unfold, his eyes wide with alarm. His anger intensifying, The villager leader vows to find the one responsible. He declares he will use a torch to search even where the sun doesn't shine, determined to hunt them down. His command rings out with chilling finality: find and kill him. Nozaki, still observing from afar, commits the man's face to memory, his own expression hardening with resolve. He will remember this. A flash of memory returns to him, a blinding light, a monstrous, fleshy creature, and his own desperate struggle against it. The memory shifts to a recent confrontation with the villager leader, who accused him of letting his daughter, the pharmacist, escape into the dangerous forest. Nozaki had simply stated he was in a hurry. Now, sitting alone under the vast, starry sky, he gazes at the full moon. A profound loneliness washes over him as he thinks of home, but new determination solidifies his thoughts. He must go back. He channels this resolve into action, beginning construction on a new shelter. He reflects that his previous base had flaws, and this new one will be an improvement, carving a space into the base of a large tree. With his wounds still a concern, Nozaki understands that hunting is too risky. He forages for sustenance instead, discovering a fruit resembling a jicama and a yam-like root beneath it. He notes how similar the vegetation is to his old world, a small comfort in this dangerous place. This food will sustain him for a while, and he decides to store it. Inside his newly carved shelter, Nozaki sits and contemplates the situation. He accesses his internal status, a new clarity forming in his mind. He realizes that his encounter with the hobgoblin triggered the development of a new skill: angry waves. More importantly, he sees that he has leveled up twice, reaching level 10. A sense of progress settles over him. He is getting better. He gazed up at the two moons hanging in the night sky, a profound realization settling in. The people of this world, he concluded, were no different from the people of his own. He had fought a hobgoblin for the first time, but now it was fellow humans, the villagers, who aimed for his life. His mind raced, categorizing the threats. There were those with murderous intentions, shadowy figures whose only response could be death. Then there were other humans, some who showed him kindness, like the young pharmacist, and others who did not, like the village leader who now hunted him. He understood that he needed to prepare himself mentally for the coming conflict, not just physically, as the flames of his campfire crackled beside him. As he lay down to rest, a final doubt crept into his mind. Could he truly be prepared for what was to come? His eyes closed, but elsewhere in the forest, the very person he had tried to help was in mortal peril. The young pharmacist, stripped of her clothes and with her ankles bound, let out a terrified scream as monstrous hands tore away the last remnants of her leafy covering. Hitoshi Nozaki scans the desolate village courtyard, noting the lack of people. He considers this a good sign. In the distance, a single villager stands near a stone structure. Suddenly, he lunges, grabbing the startled villager by his tunic. The man is caught completely off guard as Hitoshi confronts him, his face a mask of grim determination. He slams the villager against a wooden post. As Hitoshi holds him there, a dark, goblin-like figure with large, white eyes peeks out from behind another post, observing the scene. The commotion attracts the attention of the young pharmacist, who is bound to a post nearby. Her eyes widen as she recognizes Hitoshi, calling out his name in surprise. He turns to her, his intense expression softening into relief. He asks if she's all right and insists they leave the village together. The girl seems overjoyed, expressing disbelief that he actually came back for her. Her reaction puzzles him. He questions her, and she explains that she cannot leave, reasoning that all of her patients are in this village. She continues with a serene smile, assuring him that she will be released soon. She defends the villagers, stating that they all have good roots and that their strange actions don't make them bad people. Hitoshi's expression hardens. He thinks she is being stupid. His eyes then fall to her bindings, noticing that the ropes on her arms are loose and falling away. A sudden realization hits him as he looks around the house, understanding the villagers are still there. He wonders how many there are. He mutters a single word, a dreadful conclusion. Goblins? The girl's calm demeanor shatters, replaced by sheer terror. She screams at him to run, warning that there are too many. At that moment, the villager Hitoshi had subdued bursts through a nearby doorway, wielding a crude club. With a crazed expression, he slams the door open and calls Hitoshi stupid. His taunts died in his throat, his expression twisting from a crazed grin to one of utter disbelief. He could only stammer, unable to process what was happening. The source of his shock was a body crashing violently through the wooden structure above. With a single, powerful kick, Hitoshi had launched one of the ambushers skyward, sending him plummeting back down amidst a shower of debris. The man landed in a heap, defeated. Another villager, armed with a club, stood frozen over his fallen comrade, staring at the source of this sudden violence. Hitoshi met his gaze, his own expression hardened with cold resolve, ready for the fight to come. He watched as the leader and his remaining men regrouped. The leader, now wielding a sword and a round shield, stood flanked by two other armed villagers, their initial confidence replaced by tense readiness. Finding his voice, the leader let out a furious roar, urging his men forward. "Come on, guys," he screamed, his face contorted with a desperate, crazed battle cry. Outside a village hut, a tense confrontation unfolds. The villager leader, armed with a sword and shield, faces Hitoshi Nozaki. He declares that while he may have been careless in their last encounter, he will not let Nozaki escape this time. Behind Nozaki, two other men kneel on the ground, one of them trembling with rage and vowing to kill him. In response to the threat, Nozaki remains firm, offering a proposition. If the leader accepts his request, he will be allowed to live. The leader smirks, contemptuously asking what kind of request he could possibly have. He lays out his terms. They must promise to do no more harm to the pharmacist's daughter, and the materials from the defeated hobgoblin will serve as a compensation fee. As the leader scoffs, Nozaki's expression hardens. He grits his teeth and demands the leader confess to all his wrongdoings and apologize. Enraged by the audacity, the leader abandons all negotiation. He bellows an order to his men to kill Nozaki. The two villagers who were kneeling immediately rise, ready to attack. He internally scoffs, finding the men laughably weak. With a powerful roar, Nozaki shouts the name of his technique, Saitsu, and lunges forward, promising to deliver his fist directly to his opponent's face. The blow connects with sickening force. Nozaki's fist smashes into the villager's jaw, the brutal impact distorting the man's face. The man crumples to the ground, instantly silenced. As the other villagers recoil in shock, Nozaki stands over his victim, clenching his fist. He feels a shift within himself, a heightened sense of awareness he identifies as becoming tactile. A companion rushes to the fallen man's side, checking him for a pulse before crying out in horror that he is dead. The leader, Philip, stares in disbelief and rage, screaming at Nozaki, calling him a transcendental idiot for coming to a fight unprepared for its lethal consequences. A villager cries out in horror, realizing Hitoshi has killed a man named Ruben. The shock of the act ripples through Hitoshi himself. He stares at his own hand, the thought echoing in his mind. He is killed. He questions if humans are truly so fragile. His initial shock quickly hardens into cold pragmatism. He internally dismisses the man he killed as a waste of space, admitting to himself that he is not surprised by the outcome. Across from him, Philip watches, stunned that Hitoshi accomplished this without even using a weapon. Hitoshi finds himself surrounded by 8 hostile villagers. Philip assesses the group, noting that while 3 have decent weapons, the rest are merely armed with farm tools. He feels confident that his fighting skills are enough to handle these fools, and that he only needs to land one good punch to win. He, in turn, analyzes his own predicament. He reasons that in close quarters, his superior physique from this strange world should make his movements too fast for them to follow. He resolves to fight using his raw physical advantages rather than his status or skills, but remains wary of their weapons. Across from him, Philip makes a tactical decision. Realizing his opponent is unarmed, he determines that a shield is necessary. He quickly equips a round wooden shield, preparing to press the attack. He charges forward, sword extended and shield raised, roaring for Hitoshi to die. With fluid motion, Hitoshi drops low to the ground, the sword tip whistling harmlessly over his head as he dodges the clumsy thrust. The missed attack leaves an opening. Hitoshi pivots on his foot and drives a powerful kick straight into Philip's shield. The villager leader grunts, surprised by the unexpected tactic and the sheer force of the blow. With a sharp cry of surprise, a villager reels as Hitoshi Nozaki's foot connects squarely with his head. The kick is delivered with blinding speed and precision, a blur of motion against the man's shocked face. The sheer force of the blow sends the man stumbling backward, his eyes wide with shock and pain. He gasps, utterly bewildered by the kind of attack that just struck him. Despite the powerful hit, the villager regains his composure and now levels a spear at Hitoshi. Hitoshi, looking on with a detached curiosity, is asked what that move was. He calmly replies that he isn't entirely sure, but muses that it might have been called a Brazilian kick. He remains perfectly still, his back to the viewer, his focus entirely on the sharp point of the spear aimed at him. The situation escalates as other armed villagers, one with a sword, join the confrontation. Philip watches from the sidelines, his expression tense. The first villager, breathing heavily, rallies his comrades, shouting for the tough guy to be taken down. As the swordsman charges, swinging his weapon down, Hitoshi effortlessly ducks beneath the arc of the blade and seizes the man around the waist. In a display of raw power and technique, he hoists the attacker into the air and slams him to the ground with a powerful throw, sending the sword flying. The man crashes into the dirt. The other villagers, Philip included, can only stare in stunned silence. Hitoshi stands over his fallen opponent, his fists clenched. He calls them a bunch of cowards and coldly informs them that he's about to give them a very bad day, vowing to win this in one step. Provoked, another villager lunges with a spear. The weapon thrusts forward, but Hitoshi catches the shaft with his bare hands, stopping its momentum instantly. The attacker gasps, shocked. The villager desperately tries to pull the spear back, but Hitoshi holds it fast, an amused look on his face as he tells the man to let go. His expression then hardens into a glare as he issues a final warning, telling the man to stop being a prick and that he will do his best. The confrontation escalates as Hitoshi Nozaki, bare-chested and focused, deflects a staff strike from a shaggy-haired villager while simultaneously driving a powerful punch toward the man's torso. His fist connects with brutal force, sinking deep into his opponent's midsection. The impact is devastating. The villager stumbles back, vomiting violently, as other villagers, including Philip, look on with expressions of shock and horror. As the defeated man collapses, Nozaki stands his ground. An older man rushes onto the scene, distraught, asking what happened and calling out for his son. From the crowd, a voice screams that Nozaki is a monster. Nozaki, however, seems to recognize Philip amongst the onlookers. The older man looks down at the fallen villager, his face twisting from grief to fury. He turns his tear-streaked face towards Nozaki and screams, demanding to know if he was the one who killed him. His eyes narrowing, Nozaki instantly assesses the situation. He realizes this emotional, commanding man is the one in charge here. The elder's rage solidifies into a death sentence. He bellows for someone named Hegart to kill Nozaki, revealing that he had been feeding and preparing this warrior for this very moment. Responding to the summons, a new figure emerges, a warrior completely encased in plate armor, wielding a massive sword. This is Hegart. He identifies Nozaki as an intruder and speaks of his past, having been banished by his feudal lord father. Now, he intends to repay the village's kindness, declaring that Nozaki will serve well as rust on his blade. Hitoshi Nozaki stands opposite a new adversary, a warrior encased in full plate armor. He assesses the man, noting that this opponent is entirely different from the rural thugs he fought before. The knight's stance is perfect, with no discernible gaps in his defense, leaving Hitoshi to contemplate his next move. While he deliberates, a commotion erupts nearby. Philip, the village leader, furiously accosts one of his men, demanding he bring back the villagers who fled. Philip declares his intent to arm even the women and children, wanting the armored man dead at all costs. Hitoshi overhears this, realizing he is in enemy territory and a prolonged battle of attrition is not to his advantage. He forces himself to calm down, taking a deep, controlled breath to center his mind. With a slow exhale, he settles into a ready stance, his hand raised in preparation. Having regained his composure, he resolves to return to basics and analyze his opponent thoroughly. He understands that rushing him would be foolish, as the enemy would surely exploit any opening. No detail, however small, could be overlooked. His intense scrutiny reveals an anomaly. He notices a subtle peculiarity in the way the knight shifts his center of balance, a slight drag of the foot. He begins to suspect the knight is attempting to protect his left leg. If his suspicion is correct, the situation becomes clearer. The potential injury reminds him of his own past struggles with physical rehabilitation after damaging his meniscus. He knows from personal experience how crucial the knee is for both offense and defense. Armed with this knowledge, Hitoshi slowly lowers his stance, a smirk playing on his lips. He taunts the knight, asking what's wrong and if a fully armored warrior could possibly be scared of a naked, weaponless man. Through the slits of the helm, an eye glares back with silent fury. The provocation finds its mark. With a heavy stomp, the knight surges forward, closing the gap and unleashing a powerful horizontal slash with his massive sword. Instead of evading, Hitoshi meets the attack directly, catching the flat of the steel blade squarely in the palm of his bare hand. He strains, muscles bulging as he holds back the immense weight of the knight's greatsword. The steel blade presses down, mere inches from his face, but his bare hands do not yield. Realizing that a direct confrontation will only lead to him jumping into another attack, he changes his strategy as the knight brings the sword down with a heavy thud. He knows the situation is dangerous. If the knight's knee had been perfectly fine, he would have been killed already. But his goal is not to overpower the man's guard, which the knight is now solidifying. Instead of another sword swing, the knight attempts to stomp on him. Hitoshi drops low, his eyes fixed on his target, the knight's vulnerable leg. He dives forward, wrapping his arms and legs around the armored limb, using his body weight to unbalance the knight and bring him crashing to the ground. With the knight immobilized, Hitoshi shouts that no matter how strong the armor is, it won't strengthen the joints within. He applies pressure, targeting the knee with a sharp, brutal force. His eyes widen with the sheer effort of the lock. From within the great helm, the knight lets out a muffled scream of pure agony as his joint is twisted beyond its limit. With the knight now prone and helpless, Hitoshi scrambles on top of him, his hands immediately finding a grip on the man's helmet. His expression is one of cold, grim determination as his knuckles whiten, securing his hold on the steel gorget and helm. With a final, violent twist, he wrenches the knight's head to the side. A sickening crack echoes, and the armored body goes limp. His hands tighten, and with a sickening crunch, the knight's neck breaks. The sound echoes briefly in the sudden silence. The final, shuddering movement ceases as Hitoshi remains mounted atop the now limp body, the deed done. He dismounts, letting the armored corpse crash to the ground. He then kneels, placing a hand on the helmet of his slain foe for a brief moment before rising. With the fight concluded, he turns and walks away across the desolate field. From a distance, Philip watches him go, his expression hardening into a glare of pure animosity. His attention shifts from the dead knight to the living. Hitoshi approaches the village elder, directly accusing him of being the mayor who ordered his death. Philip, standing nearby, looks on in shock. The mayor recoils in terror, stumbling backward. He warns Hitoshi not to approach, threatening curses and damnation. Unmoved, Hitoshi states that it was the mayor who wished for this slaughter. The mayor's threats immediately turn to desperate pleas for his life. As the mayor continues to chatter, Hitoshi's mind briefly flashes to the so-called God he met. He internally scoffs at the memory, reminding himself that he is an atheist. He tunes back into the mayor's panicked rambling. The old man laments that the pharmacist's daughter ever saved Hitoshi and that he should have let Philip handle things. Hitoshi cuts him off, stating he doesn't want to talk anymore and feigning ignorance about the mayor's accusations. The mayor begs him to stay away, but his words are cut short by a final, piercing scream as Hitoshi lunges forward. Silence falls once more. Hitoshi stands over the lifeless body of the village mayor, his fist clenched at his side, the second execution complete. He turns in surprise as the young pharmacist calls out to him, addressing him as Mr. Goblin. His immediate thought is one of concern, wondering how she freed herself from her restraints. Before he can dwell on it, she rushes forward, her voice filled with relief as she exclaims that she's glad he's fine, though she seems to be questioning him about something. Her relief gives way to a somber tone as she admits she overheard his final, fatal conversation with the village mayor. She quickly adds that he doesn't need to say anything about it, trailing off as she takes in the grim scene. Looking him directly in the eyes, she implores him. Now that events have unfolded this way, she insists they must leave the village as soon as possible and pleads for him to take her with him. Hitoshi silently considers her plea. He internally questions if this is the right course of action, concluding that his strength is no longer needed in this village. Whether it deteriorates or rejuvenates after this, he feels he would only be a hindrance now. His thoughts continue as he looks out a window. He realizes that from the villager's perspective, the girl is now seen as his ally, and he himself has become an object of fear and loathing. He lowers his head, accepting the reality of the situation. The girl watches him, thinking with a sad resignation that because he acted on his anger, she has now lost her home. After a moment, Hitoshi agrees to her request. He instructs her to pack anything she can from her home, then notices the large bundle she already has prepared. He offers to carry the heavy load, brushing off her protests that she would feel bad. With the preparations made, the two stand together on a rooftop, gazing out over the village they are about to leave behind. She turns to him, her expression bright and resolved. With a simple yes, she affirms their departure, addressing him once more as Goblin-san. As they leave the village behind, Hitoshi thinks to himself that he will probably never forget the expression on the young pharmacist's face at that moment. With that memory fresh in his mind, they begin their journey together, him carrying a large pack and her with a walking stick, heading down a path away from civilization. As their feet tread the dirt path, she breaks the silence, noting that just outside the forest there is a main road within scattered along it. She estimates that in a few more hours, they will be able to leave the woods. She then asks if his memories of the forest are all terrible. He admits it was bad, especially since someone mistook him for a goblin. The pharmacist looks shocked, asking whose fault that could possibly be. The pointed question makes him flinch and recoil in embarrassment. He turns away, wondering if his head has become weird after everything that has happened. His companion, however, seems unfazed. She points ahead cheerfully, declaring that traveling together is super fun. She explains that she finds it easy to talk to him because he resembles her older sister and younger brother. She then reveals her destination is a place called Rock Cliff, where they live, and that the journey will likely take 2 weeks. Hitoshi is taken aback by this information. 3 days later, as he stares into a crackling campfire in the dead of night, a single thought consumes him. He messed up. Sitting beside the fire with a tent pitched nearby, he reflects on his mistake. He had thought it was still early enough to skip the last inn, but now they are stuck camping, and he is on night duty. His thoughts turn to his abilities. He recalls the pharmacist mentioning that masters in this world use a church's magical device to check their levels. This leads him to a critical realization. His own ability to view his status is abnormal, and he must be careful with it. He checked his status again, only to be met with a startling update. He was now level 15. He had acquired 2 new skills, Karate and Sense Conceal, and more disturbingly, 2 new titles, Evo Goblin and Monster. The sudden increase left him stunned. 2 new skills. He quickly deduced that Sense Conceal must be an evolution of his Sense Presence ability. His thoughts then turned to the new titles. Evo Goblin. Did that mean he was now considered a new species of goblin? He also noted there were 2 titles in this new category, the other being Monster. He grimly acknowledged the Monster title, guessing it was the karma he received for killing another person. His frustration boiled over as he silently cursed the god managing the system for meddling with his titles, wondering who the real goblin was in this situation. As he sat and processed everything, he recalled the massive jump from level 10 to 15 was entirely from the experience gained from humans. It was a fitting if grim title. A new concern arose. If a war were to break out, it would lead to rampant level inflation. His muttering caught the attention of his companion. The pharmacist turned to him, her eyes wide with concern, and repeated his last word as a question. A war. She quickly offered a reassuring smile, telling him not to worry. Her certainty made him realize there must be a system in place to prevent it. Members of the same species likely gained no experience from killing each other. As they continued their journey, she called out to him as Goblin-san. She explained that God is merciful, but this leads to a grim reality. Because it is safer to gain experience by killing other species than by hunting monsters, the sentient races like humans, elves, and beastmen repeatedly fall into war. The implication of her words struck him, and his body began to tremble uncontrollably. Noticing his state, she stopped and asked with concern if something was wrong. He could not answer. His face was a mask of pure terror, his eyes wide with a horrifying realization. His mind reeled, fixated on the horrifying logic. When he had killed people, his levels had risen considerably. Yet, it was a known fact in this world that when members of the same species kill one another, the experience gained is next to nothing. The unspoken conclusion hung in the air, a terrifying weight. The single, damning word solidified in his thoughts. Monster. He looked up at the sky, a silent, bitter plea directed at the god who had placed him here. He couldn't find any humor in these cruel antics. His own shadow stretched out before him, twisted and inhuman, as he was left with a single, soul-crushing question. What am I exactly? His spiraling thoughts were interrupted by a gentle voice from below. The young pharmacist looked up at him with concern, a simple walking stick in her hand. Do you need some medicine? She asked, her gaze fixed on his troubled expression. Whatever his answer, he did not refuse her company. The two of them continued their journey together, walking along a dirt path that wound its way through the wilderness, a wide river flowing beside. At an inn, Hitoshi Nozaki rests in bed, his mind troubled. He contemplates a grim realization. Unlike normal people, he gained experience points from killing fellow humans. This confirms his fear that he is something that only resembles a human. His eyes widen in stark terror at the thought. He knows that if this fact were ever discovered, he would be disposed of as a threat. It is a secret he must guard with his life. His frantic thoughts are shattered by a sudden, high-pitched shriek from across the room, startling him. The source of the scream is his young companion, who stands clutching a towel to her body. Flustered and shocked, she demands to know why he is in her room and orders him to leave at once so she can dress. She stammers an apology, admitting she was lost in thought. He quickly pulls on a shirt, reminding her that he had said he was going to wash up and that she should go to the cafeteria ahead of him. Sometime later, the two are seated at a table in the inn's common room. Amidst the clamor, he mentions that they will finally arrive at their destination, Rock Cliff, the next day. To mark the occasion, they raise their mugs, clinking them together in an early toast to the safe journey they have had so far. He watches her eat with a faint smile, glad that their journey is almost over and noting that she seems to be enjoying her food as usual. She happily declares it a commemoration, but he watches her with a heavy heart. He resolves to stop growing fond of her, convinced that staying by her side will only bring her misfortune. He masks his inner turmoil by teasing her, warning that she'll get fat if she eats so much. He shares a light-hearted moment with his companion, laughing across a small wooden table. They joke about the freedom to fall in love or give up as one pleases, a simple philosophy for a complicated world. The reverie fades as the journey continues. His hand points toward the horizon, where the formidable walls of a city rise against the sky. As they draw nearer, his companion's eyes light up. She turns to him, her face full of excitement, exclaiming that she can see it, Rock Cliff. He looks on, taken aback by her sudden burst of energy. She eagerly leads the way toward the city, while he follows behind, the weight of their supplies heavy on his back. At the gate, they join a line of travelers waiting for inspection. Hitoshi, his hood pulled low, observes the imposing walls, noting that as the city's role as a frontline base has ended, it now flourishes with trade. He waits for the guards to scrutinize them. As his turn arrives, a flash of panic grips him. What if there's a wanted notice from the village incident? But his companion steps forward, presenting a letter to the guard. She explains it's from her elder sister apprentice, who is an acquaintance of someone named Clarin. The letter works. The guards simply wave them through, telling them to take care. Hitoshi walks past with a blank expression, still carrying his large pack, as they are granted entry. Once inside, Hitoshi wonders how they entered so easily. His companion explains that Clarin must be a big shot, revealing she is the adopted daughter of the feudal lord, Earl Necken. She remarks that it's rare for someone to go to such lengths to become an excellent apothecary, giving Hitoshi pause. He looks around the lively streets, bustling with trade and a variety of people. Feeling like a country bumpkin, he is relieved that he doesn't seem to stand out too much. His companion calls out, urging him to hurry along. Further down the street, his companion stops to wish an elderly man well, telling him not to get sick. As the man thanks her, a woman with dark hair, standing nearby, turns her head, her expression one of mild surprise and curiosity. As Hitoshi and the girl walk through the city, a voice suddenly calls out, recognizing the girl as Belle. A young woman in a hooded cloak approaches, whom Belle joyfully identifies as older sister Claire. The two women embrace warmly. Claire, noticing Belle's state, asks what happened to her. Hitoshi steps forward, offering his thanks and stating that he did well to bring Belle here. Claire agrees, telling Belle she must be tired and should go inside to rest. Her attention then shifts to Hitoshi. With Belle safe, Claire calls out to him, using the name Goblin San, and beckons him to come closer. He looks at them, a quiet understanding settling in. This is it for him. Their journey together has ended. From a distance, the dark-haired woman watches, recalling that the village mayor they encountered was the illegitimate, exiled child of a former feudal lord. Though a scoundrel, he has noble blood, and she silently warns Hitoshi to be careful. At the same time, Claire tells Hitoshi he cannot go with Belle, acknowledging that he is thinking of the girl Sake, and wishes him well. With a kind, genuine smile, Claire tells him to take care. Her eyes well up as she watches him, grateful for what he has done. His duty fulfilled, Hitoshi turns and walks away, leaving Belle in the care of her friend. He navigates the city streets alone, reminding himself that it's not time to feel down. Survival is still the priority. He considers asking a passerby for directions. As he walks, he reflects that while he should have gone to a more distant region, his immediate need is money. With this thought, a new path becomes clear. He will become an adventurer here. His decision made, he scans the area and quickly spots his destination, a building bearing the sign of a dragon, the unmistakable mark of an adventurer's guild, a staple of this fantasy world. He steels his resolve and pushes open the massive, creaking wooden doors of the Adventurers Guild, stepping forward into a new chapter of his life. As the doors part, a brilliant white light floods his vision. He had imagined that in this new world, he would be greeted by a beautiful receptionist at a tavern, like in some fantasy game. Instead, a friendly woman with long, light hair simply welcomes him to the Adventurers Guild. The reality of the situation is an older, gruff-looking man behind the counter. The clerk asks if Hitoshi is there to register. When Hitoshi confirms, the clerk dismisses the need for literacy, stating that what's important is whether he can do the job or not, and instructs him to sign the document. Hitoshi glances around, realizing the guild is also a bar. The clerk's voice continues, noting that at this time, only other guild members are present, drinking and talking amongst themselves. He processes this information with a grim expression. He understands he cannot be careless. Despite their tranquil appearance, they were all observing him the moment he walked in. He concludes that, as expected, all the customers are adventurers, and every one of them has a dangerous look. His gaze settles on one man in particular, who sips from a wooden mug. Hitoshi's immediate assessment is that this man seems especially dangerous. The man, whose name is Kimin, turns his head slightly, not towards Hitoshi, but to a companion beside him. With a slight smirk, he asks, "What do you think?" His question is directed at a sullen young boy with shaggy hair covering his face. The boy, named Rise, remains completely silent, staring intently at another table. Suddenly, a large, burly adventurer at the other table rises to his feet, enraged. He bellows at the boy for staring, calling him an impudent brat. As the confrontation begins, Kimin watches with amusement, content to let it unfold. As onlookers watched, the burly adventurer's patience snapped. With a grunt, he hoisted a massive, ornate battle axe onto his shoulder, the heavy weapon settling with a thud. His face twisted into a mask of rage. He bellowed a single, brutal promise. "I'll crush you." A party of 4 adventurers, Hitoshi Nozuki, Kimin, the fully armored Hegart, and the cloaked Claire, travels across a barren, rocky landscape. Above them, a large bird circles in the vast sky as they press onward. Having paused their journey, Kimin sits and carefully examines a document, his expression focused as he deciphers the text written upon it. He holds up the paper, explaining that it is a subjugation request for a monster known as a gray wolf, which has been preying on local livestock. Kimin then wonders aloud why such a request was left over. Hitoshi asks for the reason, and Kimin clarifies that while the location is close and the fee is decent, the journey itself requires immense endurance, noting their own walking speed is in a different league compared to that on Earth. This was the only quest available when they arrived at the notice board, as they had slept in. Taking posted requests and receiving rewards for completion is the standard workflow for adventurers. Kimin reveals the true reason the quest was avoided. Grey wolves hunt in packs of 5 or 10. He warns that for anyone with insufficient strength, the tables would be quickly turned, making it a high-risk endeavor. The gravity of the situation dawns on Hitoshi. His eyes widen as he processes the danger, and he mutters, seriously, under his breath. Upon reaching their destination, the party is confronted by the grim sight of slaughtered sheep. An elderly villager explains to Hitoshi that this is the 3rd attack this month, with another having occurred just that morning. As the old man laments how they are being worn down, Kimin gently asks a grieving young girl, Mia, if she wants to make a proper grave. The girl breaks down, wailing for her cherished sheep, Meru, which was among those killed. Hitoshi watches her, his expression hardening with grim determination. He and his new party are met by a desperate villager, who begs the adventurers for help, explaining that if the monster attacks continue, the entire village will be destroyed. The villager gestures for the 3 of them to follow, but Claire holds up a hand, insisting that they must first hear all the details before deciding whether to lend their strength. As she begins the negotiations, Kimin instructs his burly companion to remain on lookout, telling him to watch for any strange movements and to never withdraw his attention. Nearby, Claire tells the young boy Rise to leave the negotiations to their leader, Al, assuring him they will refuse the job if anything seems unwelcome. Hitoshi observes this, noting that while the villagers seem nice, he understands why his party is so guarded. His thoughts are interrupted when Hegard approaches, asking how the meeting went and why Hitoshi has such a puzzled expression on his face. Before he can answer, Kimin joins them, confirming they will take the monster subjugation quest. He points out that the monsters seem to come from the east side of the forest and begins to offer Hitoshi a piece of advice. He explains that some clients lie, trying to make a request seem easier or to lower the commission fee. In those situations, Kimin warns, when an adventurer is caught in a predicament, they have only themselves to blame. Hitoshi reflects on what a tough world this is. Kimin continues, stating that if one has time to pity the requesters, they should be suspicious of them instead. After all, everyone is responsible for their own life. With the terms set, the party gathers at the edge of the dark woods. Staring into the oppressive shadows of the forest, Hitoshi realizes that the real test is finally about to begin. Kimin then issues his orders. Hitoshi is to act as a scout, constantly using his concealed presence skill to find the Grey Wolf's den. He gives a stark warning. If Hitoshi is found, it's over. Kimin and Hegard will wait for his report. He announces his departure to the party, who watch him from a distance as he prepares to venture into the plains alone. Kimin calls out a nickname, Yajin, as he goes. Kimin offers what he calls words of appreciation from a senior, since Hitoshi is relieving him of his scouting duty. The young boy, Rise, however, looks on with a challenging glint in his eye, telling Hitoshi to show them what he's got. Leaving them behind, Hitoshi enters the tree lane of the forest, reflecting that it has been a while since he has been in such a place. Once inside, he feels strangely out of place, as if he's trespassing in a stranger's house. He reasons that the gray wolves, being larger creatures, must have a keen sense of smell. Shaking off the unsettling feeling, he resolves to first erase his scent using some local plants. He quickly finds a patch of mint-like plants, noting that they grow in abundance and have served him well before. He vigorously scrubs the crushed leaves over his armor, then sniffs his arm to confirm his scent is masked. Satisfied, he makes a mental note to have the others do the same later. With his scent concealed, Hitoshi closes his eyes and concentrates, preparing to strengthen his senses and use his sense presence ability at its full power. His perception shifts. He becomes a single point of awareness in a vast, dark space, where the life forces of other beings appear as distant, glowing spheres. As he scans the area, he recalls Kimin's warning. The monsters move in packs of 5 or 10. He realizes that while his skill allows him to vaguely sense the presence of animals nearby, finding one specific monster among them is unlikely with this method alone. His focus returns to the physical world as he spots large animal footprints on the ground. Crouching down, he sees their tracks for more than just 1 or 2 creatures. He understands this is the key. He can now confirm if the enemy was within his sensory range. Suddenly, his enhanced senses scream a warning. The glowing spheres representing the nearby creatures begin to converge rapidly on his position. His eyes widen in alarm. He has been found. Deep within a shadowed den, the targets of the hunt growl and bare their teeth. A pair of formidable gray wolves, one distinguished by a single horn on its snout. Having led the party to this very spot, Hitoshi watches from the tree line, confirming the location. He thinks to himself, found it. He is not alone. A burly, bald adventurer and a woman with short, light hair stand just behind him, observing the cave entrance he has discovered. The burly man claps a heavy hand on Hitoshi's shoulder, a confident grin spreading across his face as he commends him. Nicely done, Yajin. With a satisfied grin, the man accepts Hitoshi's confirmation that there are only 5 enemies. Another party member, Kimin, then asks the burly man for their next move. Kimin turns to Hitoshi, whom he addresses as newcomer, telling him to watch from a safe distance. He declares that they can't have Hitoshi looking down on them, and that they will now demonstrate their true strength. With their decision made, Kimin and the burly adventurers stride forward, beginning their approach toward the wolves' den. As they move, Kimin issues final instructions to Hitoshi, who remains hidden. They will use the downwind position to get as close as possible, and Hitoshi is to signal the moment the enemies notice them, which will initiate the battle. Using his sense presence skill, Hitoshi watches the 5 enemy life forms and the 2 approaching adventurers. Suddenly, a 6th presence detaches from a hidden position and moves to flank them. Realizing the trap, Hitoshi shouts, "Incoming! Alert!" before crying out Kimin's name in alarm. From the shadows, a new threat emerges. A figure completely concealed by a dark hood and cloak draws a longbow, their single glowing eye fixed on their unseen target. The unseen archer's target was chosen. Unaware of the danger from afar, a gray wolf took a heavy step forward, its large paw pressing into the dusty ground at the entrance of its den. An instant later, an arrow found its mark, sinking deep into the beast's neck. As the wolf reared back with a pained cry, the burly adventurer seized the opportunity, rushing forward from his position to engage. He let out a ferocious battle cry, his face a mask of savage intensity as he closed the distance on the wounded animal. His 2-handed axe came down with devastating force, crushing the wolf's skull in a single, brutal blow that sent fragments scattering. With a powerful grunt, he began to wrench his weapon free, ignoring the barks of the other wolves that were now alerted to the attack. He roared again as he completed his follow-through, immediately preparing another wide swing as two more wolves charged him. From his concealed position, Hitoshi watched in astonishment. The man's power was amazing. 2 attacks, 2 dead bodies. However, as the adventurer felled his second wolf, Hitoshi perceived a critical flaw in his technique. The remaining wolves saw it too. The adventurer's movements were far too large, leaving him wide open after each powerful swing. One of the beasts snarled, recognizing the opportunity to strike. As the snarling wolf lunged, it bypassed the axe wielder and threw itself at Kimin. The swordsman reacted instantly, raising his shield to expertly block the creature's snapping jaws. He fell back into formation, pressing his back against the burly adventurers. Together, they presented a united front, shield and sword ready for the next wave of the assault. He and his companion worked in perfect sync. From his hiding spot, Hitoshi observed their strategy. Kimin moved with precision, slashing at the gray wolves' legs to cripple their mobility, while the burly adventurer, Gons, provided cover with wide, powerful swings. This tactic created an opening for Gons to end the fight with a single, explosive blow that obliterated one of the beasts. As a wounded wolf staggered away, Gons stood ready, axe held high, impressed by their flawless execution. The sheer power and coordination on display left Hitoshi momentarily speechless. He was not the only observer. The hooded archer, a key member of the group known as the Rock Cliff's strongest party, had also been watching the battle intently. With their combined might, the adventurers stood victorious over the remains of the wolf pack. After the fight, Gons turned his attention to Hitoshi, shouting at the newcomer for standing around and reminding him that his job wasn't finished yet. Hitoshi, still awed by their fearsome skill in dispatching 5 wolves so quickly, recounted the events that followed. On the villagers' recommendation, the party changed their plans and stayed the night. By the time they returned to the village to report, it was already dark. Hitoshi helped Kimin dismantle the wolf carcasses by the river to harvest their materials, learning the process as he worked. That evening, as they all shared a meal, Hitoshi reflected on the day. He surmised that the 3 veteran adventurers had likely taken his own fatigue and inexperience into account during the operation. His thoughts were interrupted when Rise approached, excitedly sharing that he'd heard Hitoshi found the gray wolves' den by himself, and that even Gons had praised him. Overhearing, Kimin playfully called him Uncle, causing Hitoshi to stammer, insisting he hadn't done much. He is approached by the young girl, Mia, who innocently refers to him as Uncle. An unseen guardian quickly chides her for the remark. With a good-natured smile, Hitoshi waves it off, assuring them it's fine, though he internally admits the label stings just a little. In response to his kindness, Mia beams and offers a sincere thank you. Later that night, under the light of a full moon, Hitoshi eats a meal, reflecting with satisfaction. He muses that his debut battle as an adventurer was a success, and because of it, the villagers can finally feel safe in the morning. Kimin presents Hitoshi Nozaki, now called Yajin, with a clinking pouch containing his long-awaited reward. Standing with Philip and another elder, they formally deliver his portion. Overwhelmed, Yajin bellows his gratitude. Philip explains that the preemptive strike against the sensitive nose gray wolves was possible thanks to Yajin's help, urging him to accept the payment without reservation. Kimin adds that while it's a small sum for them, it's enough for Yajin to live comfortably for a week. He then dismisses him, saying he has the day off before they have more work tomorrow. Yajin stares at the pouch in his hand, wondering if he truly deserves this much. He overhears that his companions have already departed, Gons to the brothel, Al to the tailor, and Kimin to the weapons shop. The gate shuts, leaving him standing alone in the city. He reflects on the immense mental pressure he felt just watching the adventurers fight, a pressure that wasn't normal. He now understands that their job truly requires them to put their lives at stake. With this new understanding, he contemplates what he should do. Standing alone, his head bowed in thought, he considers his future and the need for some kind of mental solace, like the others seek. His deep contemplation is suddenly interrupted by a loud grumble from his stomach. As if on cue, Kimin reappears, cheerfully apologizing for the wait. He triumphantly presents a massive, glistening roasted bird on a platter. Yajin expresses his awe and gratitude before digging in. He devours the food, declaring it tastier than anything he's eaten in this world. Kimin, amused, asks the guild's new bee for his opinion, mentioning that both the meat and vegetables were outrageously expensive. Kimin notes that while most adventurers seek comfort in alcohol and women, it's rare for someone to spend their money on food. Flexing his bicep, Yajin declares his decision. For an adventurer, their body is their capital. Kimin agrees, but warns him that stocking up on meat and vegetables is a difficult, thorny path. When Yajin asks why, Kimin explains the harsh realities of the local food supply. Livestock are constantly hunted by monsters. Due to high taxes, most vegetables are homegrown and don't reach the market. To top it off, spices are controlled by a monopoly of mega merchants. He winks, cheerfully reminding Hitoshi that to eat good food, one must properly earn money. With a bright smile, he rallies the group, shouting, "All right, A heavy footstep crunches onto the dry, dusty ground, signaling the beginning of their hunt. The work begins. Hitoshi, now clad in a simple lamellar chestplate, stands with a grimace of determination. Beside him, a large, ostrich-like beast with shaggy black plumage screeches, its wide eyes manic and its beak agape. From a higher vantage point, the party's strategy is revealed. Hitoshi and the burly adventurer Gons act as bait in a narrow pass, while their comrades, including a hooded archer, lie in wait on the cliffs above. Seeing the targets are in position, Philip shouts down from his perch, giving the order to attack. Kimon, now! Kimon relays the signal with a pointed finger. In response, the mysterious hooded archer draws their bow, taking aim at the creature below. An arrow whistles past Hitoshi's face, striking the beast directly in its eye. It rears back, shrieking in agony, its head mere inches from his own. With the monster wounded and enraged, Hitoshi and Gons break into a run, leading the flailing creature deeper into the ambush. They sprint side by side, their expressions focused as they execute their dangerous role as bait. As the beast closes the distance, Gons pivots. He swings a massive, double-bladed axe in a powerful upward arc, cleanly severing the monster's head from its neck in a spray of dark fluid. Since the successful hunt, time has passed. Hitoshi, now a seasoned member of the adventuring party, looks back over his shoulder, a new confidence in his eyes. He reflects on his progress. Having completed several requests with Gons and the others, they have developed smooth coordination. Kimon praises him, calling him good bait, a compliment Hitoshi internally dismisses as an easy task. To celebrate their successes, the party shares a meal. Hitoshi slams his knife into a large roast, heartily thanking his companions for the food while Gons looks on. Gons mutters in confusion at Hitoshi's strange intensity. Hitoshi explains that for adventurers, health comes first, necessitating a balanced meal with protein, vitamins, and fiber. Nearby, Kimon remarks that this isn't a noble's feast and wonders if Hitoshi is spending all his earnings on food. Later, Gons argues over a calculation, trying to figure out the cost of 15 wine barrels. He grows frustrated, slamming the table and shouting that he can only count to 10. He roars at Hitoshi, asking if he's stupid, then explains his reasoning. It's because he only has 10 fingers. Hitoshi, taken aback, simply asks why that's the case. Realizing he spoke too casually, Hitoshi is struck by the absurdity of the situation and bursts into laughter. He then suggests that if Gons uses his toes as well, he can count to 20. Gons considers this a good point. Determined, he removes his boot and begins to practice, vowing to remember his numbers. Hitoshi watches with a sigh of relief. Sometime later, after a satisfying meal, Hitoshi stands on a balcony overlooking the town of Rock Cliff. He reflects that, for the most part, he has grown accustomed to his new life, admiring the pleasant view. His new routine is interrupted one day when he, Gons, and the hooded archer gather at the guild. The receptionist presents a new quest, and Gons reads the target aloud. Grey Wolf. He listens as his party member, Kimon, weighs their options for the new quest. Kimon recalls that their last opponents were an easy win with good rewards, and asks what they should do. Gons clarifies that the request is the same as the last one, the subjugation of 5 Grey Wolves. Upon their arrival at the client's village, a representative steps forward with a welcoming smile. He informs the adventurers that the entire village has been deeply awaiting their arrival. The villager extends his thanks for them coming. In response, another member of the party, an adventurer in armor and carrying a shield, requests that the man explain the situation in detail. The villager agrees, preparing to start from the beginning. As the briefing continues, Hitoshi silently wonders if the villagers are doing well, noting to himself that the job seems to be exactly the same as last time. He stands with Gons and Kimon, ready for the task ahead. Later, the group of adventurers, Gons, the armored man, and a hooded archer, stand at the precipice of a dense forest, preparing to begin the hunt. Gons and the armored adventurer gaze into the woods with serious expressions. Beside them, the hooded archer remains a silent, watchful presence. Suddenly, Hitoshi emerges from the trees, startling Gons, who remarks on his return. Hitoshi announces that he has found the wolves' den, but there's a problem. He explains that unlike their last encounter, where the den's entrance was open, it is now overgrown with plants, making it a poor place to fight. However, he has found a clearing nearby. As he suggests luring the wolves there, Kimon protests, warning that baiting them is too dangerous and Hitoshi will be ripped to shreds. Hitoshi counters with fierce intensity, declaring that he can do it. He insists that he can run through the forest faster than anyone else and implores his party to put their trust in him. His conviction sways Kimon, who reluctantly agrees. Seeking validation, Kimon then asks Hitoshi if being a decoy is an important job for a scout. He gives Hitoshi a final, desperate plea, telling him he absolutely cannot die. As the words are spoken, Hitoshi slices open a pouch, causing a thick, dark liquid to drip onto the ground. With his preparations complete, Hitoshi begins to move away from the cave entrance, carefully laying a scent trail with the dripping liquid. The lure works. From the deep darkness of the den, 5 pairs of glowing eyes fixate on the trail. Watching from a safe distance, Hitoshi's own eye narrows in anticipation as he mentally beckons them forward. He confirms their movement, as the creatures begin to emerge from the blackness of the cave. They are coming. With ferocious snarls, the entire pack of 5 gray wolves burst from the den. As the lead wolf lunges, Hitoshi is already turning to run, putting his plan into motion. He glances back, a look of fierce determination on his face, and declares that the chase can now begin. Hitoshi sprints through the forest, the pack of 5 wolves bounding relentlessly behind him, their jaws snapping just short of their target. He pushes himself faster, his form becoming a blur of motion as he navigates the trees, his expression locked in intense focus. From an overhead perspective, Hitoshi is seen leading the pursuing wolves on a winding path deeper into the woods, executing his role as decoy perfectly. Further ahead, hidden among the trees and rocks, the rest of his party, the armored adventurer, the hooded archer, and Kimin, lie in wait, ready to spring their trap. He stands ready with his shield raised, positioned on a rocky outcrop. Beside him, the burly adventurer Gons grips his double-bladed axe, while the young archer Rise watches from a higher vantage point, bow in hand. The ambush is set. Their expressions are a mixture of focus and tension. The armored swordsman's gaze is steady, the young archer's is sullen and impatient, and the bald axeman's is grimly determined. The axeman's patience wears thin. He internally notes that their lure is late. The quiet is broken only by the brief landing and sudden departure of a small bird, startled into flight. That sudden movement is followed by a much larger disturbance as Hitoshi bursts from the tree line, sprinting at full speed into the clearing. He races past the waiting swordsman, his momentum carrying him deeper into the designated kill zone. As he runs, he turns his head and bellows a warning to the party, his voice strained with exertion. Prepare for attack. The gray wolves are coming. Just as he warned, the first of the gray wolves emerges from the forest, its fangs bared. The young archer, Rise, immediately draws his bow, knocking an arrow with a sharp thunk. Seeing the beasts, Gons grins fiercely, declaring it's time to counterattack. Rise's arrow flies true, striking one of the charging wolves directly in the head. As the beasts swarm forward, the armored swordsman plants his feet and raises his shield, letting out a battle cry to meet their charge. Another arrow finds its mark, felling a second wolf. From above, the chaos of the ambush unfolds. The adventurers engage the wolves as they pour into the clearing, with some beasts falling to the initial volley while others press the attack. Gons brings his heavy axe down with a mighty crash, cleaving into one of the wolves. But in his moment of triumph, another lunges from the side, sinking its teeth deep into his arm, causing him to cry out in pain. As the initial ambush unfolds, Hitoshi allows himself a moment of satisfaction, thinking that the plan appears to be succeeding. Beside him, the armored adventurer stands ready. His relief is fleeting. A bead of sweat traces a path down his temple as he suddenly senses an approaching presence, far more significant than the wolves they are currently fighting. His eyes widen in alarm. He looks out towards the source of the disturbance and sees a vast, teeming horde moving across the plains, an overwhelming number of creatures. Within the dark, chaotic mass, dozens of glowing points of light become visible, like malevolent eyes staring out from the approaching tide. The sight sends a jolt of disbelief through him. He questions the meaning of this, recalling that there should have been only 5 wolves. The armored adventurer shouts that enemy reinforcements are coming, prompting Hitoshi to urgently call out to Gons, who is still occupied with the first wave. The warning reaches the others mid-combat. Gons, his face a mask of disbelief, demands to know what was said. Kimin, glancing back, confirms the dreadful news. 10 units are on their way. But Hitoshi's heightened senses perceive something more disturbing. His eyes narrow, focusing intently on the incoming wave. He discerns a presence mixed in with the gray wolves that feels entirely different, especially the one at the very center of the formation. His gaze locks onto the strange lights, one of which burns larger and brighter than all the others. A single, frantic question echoes in his mind. What in the— Staring into the darkness at the pairs of glowing eyes ahead, the man known as Yajin contemplated his next move, wondering what he should do. He quickly realized that enemy reinforcements would soon be upon them. His face hardened with resolve. If he was going to escape, he had to do it now. Clenching his fist, he processed the grim reality. His companion, Philip, voiced the question of retreat, but immediately countered that they had to defeat the creatures before them first. A selfish thought surfaced, that his own life was the priority, and these people were merely acquaintances. The idea of abandoning them filled him with self-loathing. He knew this situation was his fault, a mistake he made as a scout. Roaring with conviction, he declared that he would never forgive himself if he left them behind, and charged forward. He rushed to aid Philip, who was already clashing with 2 of the horned, wolf-like beasts. Philip cried out his name, and Yajin shouted back that he would assist him. As he approached, one of the creatures lunged. Yajin responded instantly, flicking his leg up in a quick feint. The feint created an opening. He pivoted, unleashing a powerful high kick aimed straight for the beast's head. But the creature reacted with startling speed, dodging the blow and letting out a low growl. Yajin could only register his surprise at its quick reaction. Thrown off balance, Yajin tumbled to the ground. As he scrambled to rise, he saw the danger too late. The wolf lunged, and its jaws snapped shut around his leg. He realizes his initial assessment of the wolf's movements was overly optimistic. To land a blow, he understands he must kick more compactly, otherwise he will be unable to hit them. He refines his plan, slant his upper body into the kick, putting his full weight behind it while using their own speed against them. He braces himself as one lunges forward. As the wolf closes in, he resolves to strike it down with the shortest, most direct trajectory possible, pivoting to unleash a powerful kick. The blow connects squarely with the wolf's neck, producing a sickening crack. The creature's body twitches and goes limp. He wonders if he broke its neck, noting that while they possess incredible speed, they lack durability. He glances around, seeing 2 more wolves remaining. As he slumps over the defeated wolf, Philip calls out from nearby, having dispatched another one himself. He asks if Yajin is also finished with his fight. Philip's question hangs in the air, but Yajin's attention is suddenly fixed on the horizon, his eyes wide with alarm. He calls out Philip's name, a sense of dread in his voice, realizing they didn't make it in time and must retreat. His warning comes as a vast line of silhouettes appears at the edge of the clearing. An entire pack of gray wolves stands before them, far more than they can handle. Philip grits his teeth, his eyes scanning the new arrivals. He notes the presence of a gray wolf elite, a larger and more formidable specimen, mixed in with the pack. He realizes this must be the source of the strange presence he felt earlier. The elite wolf steps forward, flanked by its pack. It lets out a commanding howl, a signal that rallies its subordinates and solidifies the overwhelming threat they now face. As the massive wolf pack readied its charge, Yajin, now clad in a leather cuirass and bracers, braced himself. With a short sword held ready behind his back, he announced their advance, his voice tight with focus. Here they come. Following his warning, the horde of gray wolves surged forward, a rushing tide of fur and fangs pouring across the grassy field toward the defenders. Elsewhere in the line, the burly adventurer Gons roared at his comrades, urging them to put some spirit into it. He hefted his great axe, ready for the clash. Beside him, the hobgoblin leader clicked his tongue in grim acceptance, muttering that they had no choice but to fight. The defenders, Philip, the heavily armored adventurer, and Gons, held their ground, a desperate wall of steel against the approaching wave of beasts. Yajin, however, stood apart from the main group, positioning himself to face 2 of the charging wolves alone. As the first wolf lunged, he performed an incredible feat of agility, stepping hard onto the creature's head to use it as a springboard. The beast snarled in fury from beneath his foot. He landed back on the grass, only to realize he couldn't evade them all. With a grimace, he saw another wolf dash forward, its jaws aimed directly at his leg. The creature's teeth found their mark, slashing into his calf. He let out a sharp grunt of pain as he was brought down to one knee. But the injury was a calculated sacrifice. A jolt of shock went through the battlefield as Yajin used the momentum to launch himself onto the back of the massive gray wolf elite, the pack's leader, his blade suddenly poised at its throat. The hobgoblin leader stared, his eyes wide with disbelief at the sheer audacity of the move. He could only think, these guys, as Yajin clung to the back of the enraged alpha beast. Thrown from the back of the elite wolf, he finds himself on his feet, but completely encircled. The smaller wolves employ frustrating tactics, darting in to inflict a quick wound before retreating to a safe distance. He realizes they're not fighting to kill, but to toy with him, wearing him down. His eyes dart towards the pack's massive leader, the gray wolf elite. A chilling thought occurs to him. The pack's coordinated movements are far too intelligent for typical gray wolves. He deduces that the elite must be directing them, orchestrating the hunt. The beasts continue their harassment, shuffling around his legs and leaving fresh, shallow cuts. They are patient, waiting for him to bleed and weaken. Panting, he reflects on the absurdity of his situation, to have come this far only to end up as food. He knows that staying on the defensive is a losing strategy. The bleeding, though minor now, will become a serious problem over time. His situation will only worsen if he hesitates. But despair gives way to a surge of cold fury. His expression hardens with grim determination. He will not die here. He vows to survive and to kill every last one of the beasts. With a renewed sense of purpose, he explodes into motion, breaking his defensive stance and dashing directly toward one of the circling wolves. The chosen wolf reacts instantly, lunging forward with jaws agape. Yajin understands the gamble he must take. To land a decisive blow, he must risk getting hit himself. He holds his ground, blade held low and ready, staring down the snapping maw of the beast as it closes the distance in an instant. The risk pays off. As the wolf commits to its attack, he pivots, using the beast's own momentum against it and driving his short sword straight through its skull. With a sharp tug, he wrenches his blade free. The wolf collapses in a heap, blood erupting from the fatal wound as it falls lifeless to the ground. He breathes heavily, enduring the searing pain as another wolf's jaws clamp down on his arm, its teeth digging into his flesh. As the beast rears up to deliver a finishing blow, he ignores the agony, gripping his knife and preparing to drive it into the creature's throat. Before he can strike, a second wolf tears at his side while a third lunges, its jaws snapping shut on his weapon hand with a sickening crunch, forcing the knife from his grasp. Blood streams from a fresh gash above his eye, but his gaze remains unbroken. Disarmed, he raises his fists, his expression hardening into one of cold, brutal resolve. He realizes he can't match their speed barehanded. He needs a surprise attack. His mind races, recalling something he'd hidden in his clothes for an emergency. A silver coin. He realizes it's his only chance. With a plan solidifying, he lets out a defiant roar, tearing open a seam in his tunic to retrieve his hidden gambit. He presents the gleaming silver coin to the next wolf that approaches, holding it out as deliberate bait. The wolf, its attention fixed on the glinting object, takes the bait and lunges directly for his outstretched hand, aiming to crush the prize. The creature's jaws snap shut not on flesh and bone, but on the unyielding metal of the coin he had perfectly positioned within his fist. The wolf collapses, its jaw shattered. Yajin sways on his feet before kneeling, exhausted but victorious. He looks down at the result of his desperate ploy and confirms to himself, "I did it." He shuddered, blood and sweat tracing paths down his dirt-caked face. His gaze fixed on a new threat, a realization dawning in his mind. A black wolf. Before he could fully process the thought, the beast lunged. It soared through the air, claws outstretched, aiming to tear into his torso. But the creature's attack faltered. It fell forward, its heavy paw slamming against his chest plate with a dull thud. Yajin's eyes widened in shock at the unexpected turn. From the sidelines, Kimon's frantic voice cut through the air, barking his name in a desperate warning. The warning was unnecessary. His hand was already clamped firmly over the wolf's snout and eye, pinning the beast's head down. Its jaws hung agape, its eyes staring blankly into nothingness. Another predator dispatched. Pinned to the ground in a field of tall grass, Hitoshi Nozaki struggles for his life. A large, horned wolf-like creature stands over him, its paws pressing down on his chest as he uses both hands to hold its snapping jaws at bay. The beast's maw is inches from his face, its sharp teeth threatening to crush him. He strains with all his might, his hands the only barrier between him and a gruesome end. As he struggles, the creature's claws dig deep into the armor, covering his torso, the pressure immense. He grunts in pain, realizing with alarm that the beast's claws are so powerful they are penetrating the metal plate beneath the armor surface. His hands tremble from strain. He can feel the creature's overwhelming strength and knows his own arms are rapidly approaching their breaking point. He knows that if this continues, he will be finished. His mind races, desperately searching for a solution. A desperate resolve forms in his mind. It is a do-or-die moment. He must act now. With a surge of adrenaline, he prepares to execute his risky plan. In a shocking move, he ceases to push against the creature's jaw and instead shoves his entire hand deep into its open throat. With his hand lodged inside the beast, he unclenches his fist, releasing a handful of what he calls expensive spices. The creature immediately begins to gag and recoil as the potent substance takes effect. He watches as his desperate gamble pays off. The horned wolf rears its head back, gagging and spitting out the clump of spices he had forced down its throat. Seizing the moment of the creature's distress, he shoves hard against its neck, pushing himself away. The force of his push, combined with the wolf's own pained convulsions, sends the beast stumbling backward. As it reels, he scrambles into a crouch. Instead of retreating, he lunges forward, vaulting onto the creature's back and wrapping his arms tightly around its neck. His face is a mask of grim determination, his teeth gritted as he commits to this new, dangerous course of action. Enraged and in pain, the wolf rears up on its hind legs, its jaws wide in a furious howl, attempting to dislodge the man clinging to its back. Its front paws slam back down, claws digging deep into the earth as it prepares to move. With a powerful bound, the creature launches itself forward, beginning a wild, uncontrolled run across the grassy field. It thrashes its head and bucks violently, trying to throw its unwanted rider. He holds on for dear life as the beast continues its frantic, desperate attempt to shake him loose. He clings to the wolf's back, his body buffeted by the creature's frantic, high-speed dash through the tall grass. His face is a mask of grim determination, eyes narrowed against the wind and debris kicked up by the beast's flight. The wolf itself lets out a furious howl, its jaws wide with rage and panic as it tries to dislodge its unwanted rider. Despite the violent thrashing, he maintains his grip, pressing himself low against its powerful body. The wild ride continues, covering a significant distance as the beast's paws pound the earth relentlessly. Eventually, the wolf's pace begins to falter. Its strength wanes, and saliva drips from its exhausted, panting maw. He feels the change, his own exhaustion mirroring the beast's as he rests his head against its slowing form. A moment of understanding passes. The wolf's eye, once wide with panic, suddenly dilates, a flicker of submission or realization within its gaze. The frantic sounds of the chase cease, replaced by the quiet rustle of the tall grass. Finally, the wolf's paws dig into the dirt, bringing the beast to a complete and final stop. His hands tremble as he rests them on his chest, the ordeal finally over. His face, bruised and smeared with dirt, shows the immense strain of the battle he has just endured. The effort has left both him and the beast utterly spent. He slumps over the back of the now subdued horned gray wolf. The two of them collapse together in a field of trampled grass. The wolf itself lies panting, its great maw hanging open. Its sharp teeth are exposed, but its wild energy has been completely extinguished. Having rolled off the creature's back, Hitoshi lies flat in the tall grass, staring blankly at the sky as he gasps for air, his body trembling with exhaustion. He remains motionless, the realization dawning on him that he doesn't even possess the energy to stand up anymore. As he resigns himself to his exhaustion, believing the fight is over, a new voice suddenly cuts through the air. A man shouts for someone named Kimin to attack, declaring that with this, they will be done. The shout seems to refer to the other wolves in the area, which now lie defeated and scattered across the clearing. In the next instant, a heavy boot plants itself in the grass right beside Hitoshi's head, startling him from his stupor. He looks up to see an armored warrior standing over him, a large double-bladed axe raised high, poised to strike. Another man, bald and with a severe expression, glares down. Hitoshi realizes his critical error. He neglected to be attentive of his surroundings and the possibility of other enemies. He accepts that this was his mistake. Even if he is to be killed, he has no complaints. Instead of delivering a killing blow, the large, bald man, Gons, breaks into a wide, toothy grin. He looks down at the scene, a guttural chuckle rumbling in his chest as he remarks, "Not bad." Hitoshi stares up, his eyes wide with shock at the sudden shift. The man's voice continues, expressing that it's quite impressive for Hitoshi to have taken down such a beast by himself. As he tries to process this, the long-haired adventurer, Kimin, steps forward. He agrees that the feat is amazing, telling Hitoshi, whom he calls Yajin, that he is more than qualified to be a combatant. Kimin affirms that Gon's assessment was correct. The immediate tension breaks as the group of adventurers now stands around the carcass of the massive horned wolf. While the others stand, Hitoshi remains on the ground beside the slain beast, his mind racing. He wonders if the creature's body holds what they are truly after. His unspoken question is answered moments later. Gons reaches into the wolf's body and exclaims that he's found it, causing Hitoshi to look up in surprise. He pulls his hand back, revealing a large, crystalline object glowing faintly in the grass. Gons identifies it as a magic stone. Seeing Hitoshi's confusion, Kimin explains that the stone is used as fuel for magical devices or as a catalyst in alchemy. He remarks that it's a pretty big one. He continues, noting that it's rare to harvest a magic stone of this size. They are formed inside monsters that have lived for a long time, typically in places with high concentrations of mana, like dungeons. Kimin then shifts topics, stating that since the stone is a valuable consumable, it will fetch a high price. With a cryptic smile, he adds that after they finish dissecting the wolf, they will have some greetings to do, leaving Hitoshi to wonder what he means. Back in the village, the residents stirred with apprehension as they watched the party of adventurers return from the forest. The group was a formidable sight. The hulking Gons, the armored owl, the sharp-eyed Kimin, the silent hooded archer, and Hitoshi, now walking among them. As they entered the village proper, Gons and Owl carried the massive pelt of the black wolf slung over a large pole, a clear trophy from their perilous hunt. Gons then fixed his furious gaze on the villager who had posted the request, growling that they had almost died because of him. The man, sweating and pale, could only stammer in shock, asking if they had truly defeated the black wolf. His rage boiling over, Gons swung his weapon towards the deceitful villager, but Owl reacted in an instant, blocking the deadly strike with his shield. The villager's head would have been split in two if not for Al's intervention. Gons' wrath was tremendous, fueled by the knowledge that the requester had deceived them, a fact likely uncovered by one of the adventurer's abilities. As Hitoshi watched, the village head dejectedly confessed everything. He admitted that he knew from the start there was a high probability of more than 5 wolves, the limit a party can normally handle, but he stayed quiet to lower the commission fee, gambling with their survival. Following the confession, Al took charge, relentlessly performing reparation negotiations. Hitoshi realized that Al must have been even angrier than Gons, feeling a greater weight of responsibility for the party. On the road back to the town of Rockcliffe, the group set up camp for the night. Though exhausted enough to die, Hitoshi found the atmosphere cheerful due to the large amount of money they'd received. He mused that one couldn't be an adventurer without such toughness. Gathered around the campfire, they began to talk. They shared various stories, tales of family and enemies, past quests, and even the girls they liked, welcoming Hitoshi into their fold. He reflects on the recent events, a profound realization dawning on him. After fighting together, standing on the precipice of life and death, he finally feels like a true member of the party. The sentiment surprises him, considering only a few days have passed. As he walks with his companions, he looks up and sees the formidable ramparts of Rock Cliff in the distance. He recalls his first impression of the city, remembering how he once viewed it as nothing more than a den of criminals with notoriously poor public safety. But his perspective has changed. A warm smile spreads across his face as he realizes he now thinks of his place as somewhere to return to. He thinks to himself, "I'm home." Later, settled in a room within the city, he decides to investigate something he discovered earlier. He mentally commands his status to open. He recalls the moment after defeating the Black Wolf. He had excitedly checked his status, only to find that his level had not increased at all. It remained at level 15. His confusion turns to shock as a new entry flashes in his vision. A title, M-word Baldy in progress. He instantly understands. The blasted god is messing with him again. He clutches his head in frustration. While his titles have increased, his level has not. He wonders if he needs a special item, but his anger focuses on the god's nerve for treating a delicate matter like his hair as a joke. He mutters, insisting that he is definitely not bald. His mind races through his hardships, ejected naked into a forest, fighting monsters and men just to survive. After all that, just when he has achieved a normal lifestyle, this is the treatment he receives instead of a compliment. As he internally curses the god, an image of the divine being appears in his thoughts. She smiles serenely, raising a hand as if to placate him, and chides him not to delight in his own unfortunate sufferings. Reacting to the god's mockery, Hitoshi's fist clenches, trembling with suppressed rage. He internally rejects the divine meddling, declaring that things will not go as the deity wishes. He is not a toy. He glares upward, his jaw tight with defiance, as if challenging the heavens directly. He tells the god to just watch what he does next. His gaze settles on the night sky, where 2 moons hang amidst the stars. He makes a solemn vow. From this moment on, he will seize his own. A few days have passed since the party's last request. While Hitoshi Nozaki rests, his companions, Gons and the others, feast away their earnings. It seems the concept of saving is foreign to these adventurers, who prefer not to take on new quests until their money is gone. With so much free time on his hands, Nozaki stretches awake in his bed, realizing with a yawn that it is already afternoon. His days have settled into a routine of information gathering. After lunch, he once again finds himself in conversation with the elderly guild clerk, who greets the familiar face. He continues his discussion with a man who Nozaki has learned is not only incredible, but was once a famous adventurer himself. The clerk picks up their conversation, reminding him they were discussing the level ceiling and asking where they had left off. The clerk explains the progression. At level 5, monsters are categorized as rank 2. At level 10, they are rank 3. And at level 15, the system changes. At that point, the monsters are categorized as rank 4. The darkness is filled with the silhouettes and glowing eyes of countless powerful beasts. In response to Nozaki's question about why no one, not even Gons, has surpassed this ceiling, the clerk's expression hardens. The answer, he states, is simple. Rank 4 monsters are overwhelmingly strong. He elaborates that the metal weapons most adventurers use cannot even make a dent in them. A special weapon, crafted from an ore called black steel, is required. However, such items are so expensive that the party's recent earnings would feel like pocket change in comparison. The clerk concludes that for those who just want to complete requests, the risk isn't worth it. Level 15 is enough. He warns that even if one were to save up a fortune for such a weapon, losing it in a failed attempt means losing everything. Kimin leans against the counter, concurring with a grim assessment. It's the same for me too, he admits. Hitoshi Nozaki can only agree, his mind replaying the logic. With no reason to aim higher and face such risk, everyone simply chooses to stagnate at level 15. Later, back in his room, Hitoshi lies on his bed, hands clasped behind his head as he stares at the ceiling. The concept of the level 15 barrier weighs heavily on his thoughts. He rolls onto his side, covering his mouth as anxiety churns within him. He questions what he should do, terrified that if he attempts to break the barrier and fails, he will lose everything, even the small happiness he has finally obtained. But amidst the fear, a different question emerges with sudden, sharp clarity. His eyes widen and his fist clenches tightly over the blanket. Does he want to become strong? The following morning, he is on his feet, practicing his form with a series of swift punches. He stops abruptly, however, sensing a strange unease in his body. Walking through the common area, he realizes he wasn't imagining it. His body feels undeniably heavier than it should. While sitting with Kimin, a realization strikes him. He slams a hand on the table, startling the other man. Really? He exclaims, finally understanding the source of that feeling. Kimin calmly looks up from his meal. He explains that it's a natural side effect, one that his own sword skill also possesses. He tells Yajin that during a combat skill's use, one of its effects is a temporary enhancement of physical abilities. He continues, clarifying the mechanics. For sword skills, the ability activates the moment the user holds their weapon with the intent to attack. If they were to let go of the weapon, the skill would be cancelled. Kimin concludes his explanation. In the moment that the skill deactivates, the elevated physical ability returns to normal. It is this sudden drop that causes the user's movements to feel sluggish, creating the sensation of heaviness Nozaki had experienced. He continues, explaining that the uneasy feeling Hitoshi felt sounds exactly like what everyone experiences when they first learn a skill. Hitoshi, however, clarifies that the skill he's referring to wasn't acquired recently, asking if his explanation still rings true. He internally reasons that he would have noticed any fluctuation in his physical ability if it were caused by a skill. The thought plants a seed of doubt. This leads him to wonder if he was mistaken about the skill's effects. Kimin, observing his contemplative silence, remarks that the situation is weird. Hitoshi's mind drifts to his karate skill, which he always thought had no tangible effect on his body. He considers that if the sluggishness was indeed a reduction in physical ability, as Al had suggested, it meant he had only just experienced the skill's benefits for the first time, despite having possessed it for ages. As the pieces begin to connect, his hand clenches tightly on the table. Kimin, noticing the sudden tension, worriedly asks what is wrong. But Hitoshi's eyes widen with a sudden, critical thought. If a sword skill triggers when one grabs a sword, then what could possibly be the trigger for karate, an art that uses no weapons? The answer hits him. It's his breathing. He realizes that if the trigger for the karate skill was simply using its techniques, then his unique abdominal breathing, a karate technique he has practiced for years to remain silent and undetected, would be a constant trigger. His breathing is fundamentally different from a normal person's. The realization expands. It isn't just his breathing. His manner of walking, his distribution of gaze, the way he shifts his center of mass, all are karate techniques deeply ingrained into his very being. It all clicks into place. Because he uses karate techniques on a daily basis, the skill was constantly activated. The moment he was unguarded on the bed, his breath disordered, was the first time the skill had turned off, allowing him to notice it. The revelation is so staggering, he shouts for Al, startling Kimin completely. He had demanded with fierce intensity that Kimin teach him everything he knew about skills. Everything. Following that conversation, he now walks with purpose, his feet planting firmly on the uneven ground as he seeks out a place to be alone. He finds a suitable location, a wide, dusty clearing surrounded by the ruins of old stone walls. He scans the area, confirming his solitude. All right, he murmurs to himself. No one's around. He recalls how Kimin's words had left him momentarily stunned, glad that he found this private training spot beforehand where no one could see him. The memory of Kimin's explanation is vivid. The adventurer had theorized that with a deep understanding of a skill, one could deliver the best possible attack in any circumstance. The most extreme effect, he posited, would be the optimization of movement. The phrase echoed in Hitoshi's mind. Optimization of movement. If that were true, the implications were staggering. He realized with a jolt of excitement that he had to test the theory immediately. With his mind made up, he settles into a familiar fighting stance, his body coiled and ready in the center of the clearing. As he prepares, he feels the skill react within him. His body begins to move. He tells himself to picture the movements, to not resist, and to surrender completely to the flow of the skill. He throws a punch, and, for a moment, he is not alone. The spectral forms of his past training partners and masters appear beside him, their movements mirroring his own as he taps into the deepest essence of his art. He threw a punch, his eyes wide with intense focus as his body moved with a newfound, instinctual precision. As he held the pose, a single thought echoed in his mind. Incredible. He finally understood the mechanics his body had just performed. The skill had guided him to convert and store the returning energy from his movement directly into his knees at the perfect moment. From there, the process was a cascade of perfect actions, relaxing his knees to lower his center of gravity, then pushing out while adding a 180-degree rotation to his fist. The final step was to unleash the energy stored in his knees, using them as a spring to transfer the force through his upper body and into the strike. The result was a punch that carried the weight of his entire body, a sensation he found mysterious. He realized that performing such a complicated physical maneuver would have been impossible without the skill's guidance. He stood for a moment, holding the final form of the punch, letting the feeling of optimized movement settle within him. The wooden training post before him had shattered from the impact. Under the light of the full moon, he continued his solitary practice, a small figure against the vast darkness. His body flowed from one movement to the next, a powerful side kick extending with perfect form. He then transitioned seamlessly into a defensive stance, hands ready, before finishing with another explosive kick, his leg cutting through the air with controlled force. He continued his solitary training, each movement flowing into the next with newfound precision. A blur of motion cut through the night air as he perfected his form. The feeling of his body moving in perfect harmony, guided by the skill, brought a bead of sweat to his brow and a fierce, exhilarated look to his eyes. He realized with a jolt of clarity that this was truly fun. This sensation was deeply familiar, pulling forth a memory from his past. A much younger version of himself, clad in a karate gi, his small frame already tensed with determination. He saw the boy in his mind's eye, a mirror of his own beginnings. It was just as it had been back then, the same passion, the same drive. The image of his past self seemed to stand beside him, a testament to a lifetime of dedication. A profound sense of gratitude washed over him as he extended a fist, not in aggression, but in acknowledgement, offering his thanks to this new world. His gaze then lifted to the vast, cratered moon hanging in the night sky. He offered further thanks to the god who had created this karate skill, the very thing that connected his past life to his present reality. Standing on a hill overlooking the sleeping town, bathed in the moonlight, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He understood that even in another world, his art was not forsaken. From this moment forward, he resolved he would live strong. A lone figure lies exhausted in the snow, spread-eagled under the vast sky. In the distance, the sun's first rays break over the silhouette of a fortified city wall. The man, Hitoshi Nozaki, remains on the ground, his body spent. A chronicler's note marks the moment, an unyielding heart for the truth, and so, the night brightens. Despite his physical state, his eyes are wide with a fierce, restless energy. He pants, declaring that he didn't sleep a wink and still wants to train even more. His resolve, however, cannot overcome his body's limits. He lies still as the city awakens and its people begin to stir, realizing that further training is impossible for now. Sometime later, inside the Adventurers Guild, Nozaki examines the quest board. He hopes to find a suitable task, his presence noted by the nearby guild clerk. His eyes scan the various postings until he spots one in particular. "It's this," he declares with satisfaction, pointing to a notice. "Found it." He brings the request to the counter, where the guild clerk looks at it with surprise. The clerk questions if he truly wants a quest for collecting medicinal herbs, and Nozaki asks him to proceed with the paperwork. Nozaki explains that since he's heading out for a request, he won't need to pay the entrance fee. More importantly, it's a chance to gather his own herbs to make salves. The clerk remains skeptical, wondering aloud why a member of their signature party would take such a humble request. The clerk's curiosity is piqued. He asks who taught Nozaki to make his own salve, noting its famed effectiveness and that apothecaries don't share their recipes except with disciples of many years. He jokingly asks if Nozaki resorted to threats. Nozaki calmly replies that an apothecary accompanied him midway through a recent trip. The memory brings forth the image of the one who taught him, Bell, the young village pharmacist. With the quest officially accepted at the guild, Hitoshi Nozaki takes the emblem, his first formal task, now underway. He immediately departs, walking with purpose toward the city's fortified gate. At the checkpoint, he presents his travel permit to a guard. After a quick inspection, the guard grants him passage. Leaving the stone walls of the city behind, he follows a dirt path leading out into the wilderness, guided by a simple wooden signpost. His bare feet press firmly against the earth as he makes his way along the trail. The path leads him into a vast, open landscape of rolling hills and sparse vegetation, a solitary figure against the horizon. After some time searching, his eyes fall upon his objective, a small plant with broad leaves. He has found the gnarl herb. He recalls the instructions for its collection. The roots must be dug out and then carefully wrapped in a damp cloth. He sees this not just as a quest, but as valuable practice, confident he can finish the task quickly. Following the procedure precisely, he places the carefully harvested herbs into his shoulder bag. With the gathering complete, he stands for a moment over the neatly wrapped roots in his bag, his first objective accomplished. Having successfully gathered the herbs, he turned his thoughts to his own capabilities. He acknowledged the possibility of encountering enemies or dungeons that could seal his skills, resolving to refine his movements so he could fight effectively even if his abilities were nullified. He also considered the synergy between his abilities, practicing a sharp kick and then extending a fist. It occurred to him that combining his karate and sense-presence skills would be a powerful strategy, and he made a mental note to test if it was possible to fight while sense-presence was active. His mind raced with possibilities. He wanted to determine the effective range of his karate skill and investigate his other abilities as well. Standing on the precipice, he felt a surge of excitement at all the things he wanted to accomplish. The rush of ambition, however, was followed by the weight of exhaustion. He sat down, breathing heavily, acknowledging that staying up all night was rough. Still, he found it enjoyable. As he rested, his senses suddenly flared. His head whipped to the side, his expression one of sharp, startled alertness. The source of the alert was not something he saw, but something he felt. An image of a deer formed in his mind, a clear and distinct presence. He was baffled, wondering how he could possibly know what it was without even seeing it. He rubbed the back of his neck in disbelief. A deer, he thought, the identification coming to him with unnerving certainty. The implications of this new perception began to sink in. He stared out into the forest, his eyes wide with a startling realization. His awareness expanded, painting a picture of the unseen world around him. He perceived a large spider lurking nearby and a bird soaring through the air. It wasn't just one or two creatures. He was at the center of a vast, invisible ecosystem. His senses flooded with the presence of everything living around him. Snakes slithering, lizards crawling, insects buzzing, and small mammals hiding in the undergrowth. He was aware of them all. He focuses his newly enhanced senses, realizing that what was once a fuzzy presence is now a clearly defined outline. He can perceive the very shape of the creatures around him. This new clarity leads him to a powerful conclusion. After learning to handle the influx of information, his information processing ability has increased, causing his sense-presence skill to evolve. A surge of triumph courses through him. He throws his arms into the air, filled with the conviction that he can do it, that he can become even stronger. His resolve sharpens as he turns his attention to his current affairs, his hand resting on a document covered in the unfamiliar script of this world. Later, at what seems to be a guild counter, a clerk greets him. The man notes that Hitoshi has been working hard, coming in every day lately. Hitoshi offers a simple thanks as he completes his transaction, deciding to sell not only his own portion of the earnings, but his party members as well. The clerk's expression turns serious. He leans forward, addressing Hitoshi by his moniker, Yajin, and delivers a grave warning. You're being targeted. He explains that rumors are spreading about a newcomer in a powerful party who is stashing away money instead of spending it, making him a juicy target. Criminals who have lost their place in the Ligam and Megid empires are now flowing into the subnational groups near Rock Cliff, and they are far more cunning than the locals. Hitoshi's face hardens as the clerk urges him to be careful, warning that these are groups that wouldn't think twice about killing for money. Taking the warning to heart, he pulls his hood over his head, his gaze sharp and focused. He confirms that this is what he had been told, now fully aware of the danger. He walks through the city streets, the guild clerk's warning echoing in his mind. Around him, the daily life of Rock Cliff continues, but his senses are on high alert. His eyes narrow as he internally pushes back against the advice to stop seeing everyone as a criminal. A flicker of unease crosses his face. Continuing on his way, he pulls his hood down further, casting his face into deep shadow as he moves with purpose. From beneath the fabric, his gaze remains sharp and unwavering, a silent predator assessing his environment. He soon leaves the city walls behind, his solitary figure striding across the barren, open land outside the settlement. Suddenly, he is no longer alone. Two men, a lean, shaggy-haired man and a large, burly one, flank him, cutting off any path of retreat. The shaggy-haired man's face contorts into a wide-eyed, manic expression, his hostile intentions now perfectly clear. Hitoshi grimaces in annoyance. Just as the thought had occurred to him, his sense-presence skill activates, confirming the threat by revealing three distinct, glowing silhouettes. His suspicions are confirmed. He realizes they have been tailing him constantly since he left the city. There is no doubt that he is their target. He quickly assesses the situation. 3 enemies. He concludes that in a place like Rockcliffe, one cannot hope to survive with half-assed skills. The confrontation is here. He sizes up his opponents, his mind racing. These are not common bandits. They are professional killers. This realization cements his grim understanding of this world. He knows they have studied his recent activities and chosen this secluded forest for their attack. To survive and secure his place in the city, he must fight. Fleeing now would mean losing everything. With that, his decision is made. He will engage them here, in the forest. Elsewhere in the woods, one of the ambushers, a figure in a tattered hood, walks alone among the trees. He is soon joined by the shaggy-haired man, and the two continue on their path. Their path is blocked by the burly adventurer, Gons. The hooded man turns, his attention caught. The three now stand together. The shaggy-haired man addresses Gons, asking if he needs something. Beside them, the hooded figure stares ahead, his eyes wide. From the cover of a thick tree, Hitoshi observes the gathering, his face set with grim determination. He then steps out from behind the tree, revealing himself. The 3 criminals turn in unison to face their target. A low sound of anticipation escapes the hooded man's lips. A wide, unnerving smile spreads across his face, his eyes gleaming with a disturbing excitement. The hooded criminal lays out his terms, demanding all of Hitoshi's valuables and the location of his hidden fortune, promising to spare his life in return. The burly man, Gons, scoffs at this, admitting they have no intention of letting Hitoshi return alive, as he would surely report them. Hitoshi listens to the false promise and the brutal truth, a single thought forming in his mind. It is all a lie. He then speaks, his voice cold and steady, warning them that Gons and his associates would not forgive anyone who lays a hand on one of their party members. He finishes with a threat, stating that it will be their end if they underestimate adventurers. The shaggy-haired criminal smirks, turning to the large man beside him. With a mocking tone, he asks if Hitoshi's threat is true, sarcastically questioning Gon's supposed power. His taunt is cut short as a powerful blow strikes him from behind, sending him stumbling forward in shock. It was Hitoshi. Having delivered the surprise attack, he is already turning to flee into the forest, shouting back that he lied to them. The criminals are left momentarily stunned. Gons roars in fury, questioning who is trying to run away before vowing to slaughter Hitoshi. As the hooded criminal sprints in pursuit, Hitoshi considers his options. He knows that returning to the city after fleeing would only make him a target for other criminals. His mind is made up. He will survive this encounter. He steels his resolve, internally roaring that it will be the end for anyone who looks down on adventurers. With his decision made, Hitoshi turns to face his 3 pursuers. Their expressions are a mixture of rage, surprise, and manic glee. With a grim smile, Hitoshi announces that the hunt has. In the quiet woods, a massive, pale log lies fallen amongst the trees, forming a natural bridge over the uneven ground. Suddenly, a silhouetted figure sprints across the length of the log, moving with incredible speed. He vanishes as quickly as he appeared, leaving the woods silent once more. But the silence is broken again as 2 pursuers follow in his wake, one shouting for him to wait. The pursuers are a trio of armed men, their faces twisted in frustration. The burly one, Gons, roars for their quarry to stop running. Their target, Hitoshi, glances back, his expression calm and analytical as he gauges the distance between himself and the 3 men chasing him. He notes that a gap has opened up between the 3 of them. It's a natural consequence, he realizes, of the differences in their armor, weight, and individual physique. Just as he calculates this, his theory proves true. The rearmost adventurer, weighed down by his armor, loses his footing on the uneven terrain and begins to fall. Hitoshi's eyes narrow. He recognizes the moment for what it is, an opportunity. One of his pursuers has caught his foot and is now vulnerable. He seizes the opportunity, sprinting past a tree while his two remaining pursuers follow close behind. As he runs, he focuses his intent, activating a skill to completely hide his presence from his pursuers, who are now left disoriented in the clearing. Having vanished from their sight, he presses himself against the side of a large tree. The two adventurers stop, bewildered, with the burly one shouting in confusion that their target has disappeared. The burly adventurer, Gons, scans the empty woods, demanding to know where Hitoshi went. Before he can get an answer, Hitoshi explodes from behind a tree, striking Gons across the jaw with a swift, precise blow. The impact sends Gons stumbling backward, coughing and gasping for air. His companion in scale, Male, cries out in shock at the sudden attack. Not giving him a moment to recover, Hitoshi pivots and drives a powerful kick into the larger man's ribs, his face a mask of cold determination. The force of the kick sends Gons careening sideways, directly into the path of his fellow adventurer, as Hitoshi begins to move away. Gons chokes, still reeling from the first punch, while his companion's eyes widen in panic, yelling for him to move as they begin to fall. The two adventurers become a tangled heap, their legs giving way as they collapse to the forest floor. On his knees, the scale male adventurer could only shout in fury as Hitoshi brutally stomped on his fallen comrade, who lay tangled on the ground. Having made his point, Hitoshi turned and fled. Enraged, the adventurer scrambled to his feet, vowing to show Hitoshi the fruits of his training. Hitoshi, however, anticipated this, his eyes sharp as he gripped his blade, ready for the confrontation. He stopped his retreat and pivoted, facing his pursuer head-on. With the short sword held in a reverse grip, he braced for the adventurer's charge. The adventurer closed the distance in an instant, his hand shooting out to grab Hitoshi's weapon arm in an attempt to disarm him. A grimace of fierce determination spread across Hitoshi's face. Instead of struggling against the grip, he used his free hand to deliver a powerful, direct punch to the adventurer's jaw. The blow landed with crushing force, the impact visibly distorting the adventurer's face. Stunned, the adventurer's body went limp. He dropped to his knees before collapsing face-first into the dirt, completely incapacitated. Hitoshi stood over the unconscious form for a moment, his sword still in hand, ensuring the threat was neutralized. His task complete, he turned and sprinted away into the woods, leaving his defeated pursuer behind. On the ground, the last of his pursuers curses his defeat. He struggles to push himself up, his hand trembling around the hilt of his sword as he supports his weight. His effort is met with a chilling sight. Hitoshi stands over him, a silent, imposing figure. The defeated man lets out a squeak of terror, his sword held feebly before him. The adventurer's bravado shatters completely. With tears streaming down his face, he begs for his life, promising fervently that he will never oppose Hitoshi again if he is just spared. After a moment of silent consideration, Hitoshi turns his back on the pleading man and begins to walk away. He disappears into the dense tree-line of the forest, leaving the defeated adventurer alone on the ground. As soon as Hitoshi is out of sight, the man's fear twists into a grimace of pure hatred. He clenches his teeth, shaking with rage as he internally vows to remember this humiliation. His thoughts of revenge are cut short. From within the forest, Hitoshi has reappeared, now holding a large, rough stone in his hand. He wins back his arm, his expression set and determined, preparing to throw the stone with lethal force. Sometime later, in a different location, the adventurer Kimin examines a collection of armor laid out on a wooden surface. He observes that Hitoshi must have thrown a stone and killed the man. He explains to Hitoshi that this was the correct course of action. It was wise not to enter the man's sword range, as it was possible the enemy possessed a special sword skill. He listened as Kimin explained the harsh reality of their location. In the city of Rockcliffe, all adventurers were stuck at level 15. With no level difference, the competition was fierce, and many adventurers earned nothing, forced to take on side jobs to survive. Hitoshi's expression hardened as he processed the information. He realized that those were exactly the kind of desperate men who would target him. Kimin confirmed his unspoken thought, adding that while skilled individuals could make a living honestly, others would stoop to bandit-like side jobs. He advised Hitoshi to flaunt his strength until everyone became too afraid to challenge him. Continuing his lesson, Kimin gestured to the spoils from their earlier encounter. He warned that motives for attacks weren't just money, but also jealousy or eliminating rivals. Prominent adventurers were always targets. Kimin's advice was clear: sell the equipment before dark. Circulating stolen gear in the slums was a display of power, a rule of survival in this place. Taking the advice to heart, Hitoshi made his way into the city's less reputable quarters. He found a pawn shop, marked by a simple wooden sign depicting a money bag, and placed a small pouch on the counter. Before a hooded pawnbroker, Hitoshi presented the gear. The shopkeeper accepted, stating they would be his client from now on. Hitoshi quietly asked if the payment was sufficient. With the transaction complete, he sat alone on a well, the small bag of coins feeling insignificant in his palm. He sighed, the thought weighing heavily on him. This was the price of a life. He wondered grimly if his own life was worth so little in this world. Rising, he walked through a narrow alley, the grim realization solidifying. His new battle for survival would be against criminals, right here inside the city walls. His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden shout. A bearded man leaned from a nearby doorway, calling out a name. Yajin, over here. He finds himself seated at a wooden table inside a tavern with Kimin and the burly adventurer, Gons. As Hitoshi takes a drink from a large wooden mug, Gons leans toward him with a wide, knowing grin. The large man loudly asks if Hitoshi came right after selling all the equipment he had acquired, exclaiming what easy money it must have been. The bearded man who had called out to Hitoshi immediately shouts for Gons to shut up, looking flustered. Kimin, however, smoothly suggests that this is a perfect chance for Hitoshi to show off his new wealth and buy everyone around. Unconvinced, the bearded man turns on Hitoshi, accusingly asking if he's already out of money and trying to mooch off him. In response to the bickering, Hitoshi simply looks at them with a faint smile, telling them to just drink. He remarks that there's no time for an adventurer to be moping around. His words break the tension. Gons bellows in agreement, calling for a cheer. The bearded man concedes that Hitoshi is right. Watching the exchange, Kimin reflects internally that it's pointless to dwell on past troubles alone. Following his lead, 3 mugs clash together in a hearty toast, a prelude to the rowdiness that would follow. As the 4 men drink together, Hitoshi feels the heavy, gloomy feeling that had settled in his chest begin to dissipate, if only for... In a city alley, a large, bald adventurer named Gons confronts an unseen person. His face is a mask of brutish intimidation as he growls a simple, threatening demand for their valuables. The commotion draws the attention of Hitoshi Nozaki and his bearded companion. Nozaki's mouth falls open in disbelief and irritation at the blatant shakedown. Gon's target is a nervous young adventurer who begins to sweat, stammering as he asks if it's money Gons wants. From a short distance, Nozaki and his companion watch the scene unfold, Gons looming over his victim with an axe in hand. Nozaki's eyes narrow in contempt. He internally curses the man, thinking that Gons is a complete idiot for his brazen and reckless behavior. The nervous adventurer, having survived the encounter, explains the situation to Nozaki. He has realized that Gons acts purely on instinct, picking fights with those who displease him, especially new adventurers. He extorts money when he wants it, and if anyone refuses to comply, he simply resorts to force. His explanation is underscored by the image of Gons from behind, his massive axe resting on his shoulder. The adventurer confirms that Gons is strong, reputedly stronger than anyone else in the city. He continues, recounting that those who previously tried to retaliate had the tables turned on them, one after another. Now, no one dares oppose Gons except for strangers who don't know his reputation. The adventurer warns Nozaki to take care, seemingly reacting to an unspoken intent for Nozaki to perhaps display his own strength to avoid becoming a target. As Gons departs, the adventurer gives one last warning. Acting recklessly like Gons will eventually get you killed, and this world isn't just filled with people who offer a straightforward challenge. With the incident over, Nozaki tells his companion he's going to the weapon shop, while the bearded man says he'll be collecting medicinal herbs. Nozaki walks away, lost in thought. He ponders a contradiction. Why is it that Gons, a man who lives as he pleases through brute force, can survive without being scammed or manipulated in a world that supposedly contains such dangers? An adventurer with his hair tied back in a ponytail, Kimin, speaks to a bearded man, asking if he is going out. Before the man can reply, Kimin provides the name, Al. He elaborates, warning the bearded man not to be deceived by Al's appearance. Kimin describes Al as a snake who runs a personal information network across the city, so effective that any plot to assassinate Gons would be immediately reported to him. Kimin mentions he's just returned from a meeting and is now heading out for a request. He adds that Al has a hidden side, with information manipulation being his forte. Kimin then muses about a strange rumor, wondering who spread the idea that Gons' extortion victims were blessed by the war god's divine protection, noting that the person involved was actually happy about it. With a friendly smile that leaves his companion looking puzzled, Kimin says his goodbyes. See ya, he calls out, then addresses the bearded man directly. Oh yeah, Yajin. He adds that thanks to the recent events, their party's fame has been saved. The reveal of his identity is still fresh. Nozaki recalls Kimin's parting shot, delivered with unnerving confidence. The hair growth medicine he's looking for doesn't exist in this city. The personal nature of the comment leaves Nozaki stammering in shock, demanding to know how Kimin could have possibly known about his private search. Later, while walking through the city streets alone, his hood drawn, Nozaki reflects on the power structures at play. He reasons that when people speak of Gons' fearsomeness, Ael's name must also be mentioned. He resolves that he, too, needs to build a name for himself. His train of thought is broken when he spots a familiar figure ahead. His eyes widen as he recognizes Kimin walking away. Watching the man's retreating form, Nozaki begins to formulate a plan. He notes that Kimin is feared by everyone despite his smaller frame, and considers that he could be a perfect model for how to project power. A look of grim determination crosses his face. He decides on his next move, a 24-hour surveillance mission to uncover the secrets of Kimin's mysterious lifestyle. His surveillance led him to a particular building, and he stopped before its wooden door, finding himself at the location Kimin had specified. He looked up at the structure, his confusion growing as he identified it as an inn. He wondered why Kimin would be involved with such a place. Suddenly, a man burst through a window just above, shouting curses as he landed. He scrambled to his feet and shoved Nozaki aside, yelling for him to move. The man, panicked and sweating, muttered to himself as he fled. He spoke of rejecting a woman's invitation while drunk, fearing he might have killed her, and expressed shock that she was acquainted with a certain man. As the assailant sprinted away, Nozaki watched him go, completely baffled by the sudden and violent turn of events. His thoughts were interrupted when the boy, Rise, grabbed his arm. Rise cursed that the man had turned a corner, then shouted Kimin's name, revealing he had been tasked with protecting the girl involved. Nozaki was startled to hear Kimin's voice seemingly coming from a boy. Rise relayed Kimin's question, asking if Yajin could use his presence-sensing ability to track the man. Nozaki affirmed that he could. With that confirmation, Rise's expression became intensely focused. He declared they would chase the man and demanded Yajin's assistance. The two immediately broke into a sprint, running side by side. As they pursued their target, Nozaki asked for an explanation of what had just occurred. Rise explained that the guild master had mentioned a harlot with whom Kimin was friendly. He relayed that the man they were chasing had violently attacked her during a meeting and fled, prompting their pursuit. He continues the chase, his expression grim as he recalls the woman's grave injuries. Beside him, Rise watches the fleeing assailant and vows to kill the bastard. The pursuit leads them down an alley to a stone building with a heavy, double-doored entrance, a tavern. Taking cover behind a crumbling wall, Rise watches the entrance, noting that their target has gone inside and still hasn't reemerged. Kimin's voice, channeled through the boy, confirms this. He speculates that the man knows he angered someone and is now frozen with fear inside. Through Rise, Kimin perceives the indistinct shapes of the target and other patrons within the tavern's darkness. Impatient, Rise suggests they charge into the tavern. Nozaki immediately rejects the idea, feeling the strain of maintaining his heightened senses for so long. He explains that marching in would be too dangerous. Kimin adds to the assessment, revealing that the target's allies are likely gathered inside, and that he's been talking with them since entering. Rise accepts the logic. Nozaki gives a confident thumbs up, stating that he'll be fine as long as it's just him. They agree on a new plan. Wait for the bastard to move. A bead of sweat traces a path down Nozaki's face as the prolonged use of his sensory ability takes its toll. Crouched in the alley, the two of them wait. Suddenly, Rise's eye widens. Through Kimin's remote perception, he witnesses one of the figures inside the tavern begin to stir. The target has moved. Rise reports that the man stood up and called out to a customer in front of him. The stakeout is over. He held his position, listening intently as Nozaki's voice cut through the tension, reporting that the target was now visible through the upper part of the door. The man was approaching the counter, moving from left to right. In response, the young archer drew his bow, knocking an arrow and pulling the string taut. His visible eye narrowed in concentration, awaiting the final signal. From his own vantage point, Nozaki watched the final approach through a small opening, his voice a low, urgent whisper as he counted down. 3, 2, 1. He's coming. Inside the tavern, the hooded man closed in on his objective, a woman with braided hair sitting calmly at a table, seemingly unaware of the imminent danger. Before he could reach her, an arrow sliced through the air, embedding itself deep in his neck. The woman looked up, her composure finally breaking as the man lurched violently in front of her. The force of the impact sent him stumbling backward, his body twisting as he began to fall. He crashed onto the wooden floorboards, life fading from his eyes. The woman let out a sharp scream, while another patron stared in disbelief, shouting in shock and confusion. From outside, Rise lowered his bow, his form briefly visible through the shattered window pane. The shocked patron, meanwhile, rushed to the doorway, peering out into the alley. His expression was not one of triumph, but of deep concern, his gaze fixed on the scene of chaos he had just created. He turned to Nozaki, voicing his worry for the woman's condition. Nozaki, ever pragmatic, simply stated that it was time for them to return. He and Rise had retreated from the chaos of the tavern to a quiet, timber-framed building elsewhere in the city. Inside one of its rooms, the woman they rescued lay resting in a bed. Nozaki and Rise stood over her, quietly observing. The boy watched her sleep, expressing his relief that her condition had finally stabilized. His relief, however, was tainted with guilt. He turned away, lamenting that even though he had vowed to protect her, he had failed to do so this time. As the woman breathed steadily, Nozaki tried to console the somber boy. He assured him that the medicine used was taught by the city's best apothecary and would leave no scars, then noted aloud that the woman must be precious to him. Nozaki's expression softened as he observed Rise, thinking to himself that the boy was back to being the normal Kimin again. He then spoke to Rise, remarking that the girl was similar to someone. The observation struck a chord within Rise. He looked down, realizing with a heavy heart that the girl was indeed similar to his little sister. The memory was a dark one. His face shadowed over as he recalled the painful truth. His little sister had also been sold. Nozaki watched him, his own expression turning grim as he processed the revelation. Later, as Nozaki walked alone along a stone path, he reflected on the mission. In the end, he concluded he wasn't able to use the criminal as a reference. He came to a stark realization about the man he knew as Kimin. Frankly speaking, Kimin's way of displaying his power was through assassination. He walks away, his mind still reeling. From the shadows, Rise watches him go, his own thoughts turning inward. The boy acknowledges that Nozaki's straightforward methods are not something he can simply imitate. In the end, someone like him can only operate directly. Rise continues his assessment, wondering if perhaps Kimin is the one most feared out of the three of them. Meanwhile, Nozaki sighs to himself, thinking it will be a long time before he can find any days of ease. His somber reflection is cut short by a sudden realization. He stops in his tracks as a new thought surfaces. There is, in fact, one more way left for him, a way to truly show his power. He recalls what the adventurer had said. The competition in this city became so fierce, and the public order so bad, precisely because everyone is stagnant, unable to advance past level 15. Looking up as if at a physical barrier, he finally understands. The level ceiling. With a dawning sense of purpose, his hand moves to the hilt of his weapon, ready to face this new, universal challenge. The view looks down upon the tiled rooftops of a quiet town, focusing on a narrow, empty alleyway below. Following the alley, two men are seen walking. One is Hitoshi Nozaki, his hood up, and beside him is another man, similarly cloaked. They come to a stop. The second man, his face still hidden, draws a long sword, the blade trembling as he points it toward Hitoshi. A few days have passed since the assassination attempt on Kimin. In that time, Hitoshi has been forced to endure waves of attacks from various scoundrels. He wearily dodges another assault, thinking to himself that this is happening yet again. But this time is different. A wild energy courses through him. With a sharp, focused gaze, he accepts the challenge, stating that he is fine and telling his opponent to bring it on. His opponent is a man with short, spiky, light-toned hair and a large, cross-shaped scar marking his left cheek. He holds his sword with a somber, determined expression. The scene shifts to a training ground. The scarred man stands ready with his sword, while Hitoshi faces him, unarmed, in a martial arts stance. This is not an attack, but a duel. Hitoshi's eyes are locked on his opponent, his expression one of pure concentration as he clenches his right fist. He grounds himself, his body coiled like a spring, ready to react to the slightest movement. Across from him, the scarred swordsman shifts his weight, his boots scraping against the stone floor as he prepares to lunge, his focus matching Hitoshi's own. The scarred swordsman sits across from Hitoshi, a confident smirk on his face as he prepares for their training session. He and Hitoshi lock eyes, a silent understanding passing between them. The swordsman's fingers twitch in anticipation. With a scrape of his boot on the stone floor, the swordsman rises, gripping his blade. Hitoshi observes his opponent's position and points out a critical flaw. The swordsman is backed into a wall. Indeed, the swordsman finds himself with no room to retreat, his back pressed against the cold stone. A flicker of irritation crosses his face, a bead of sweat forming on his temple. Despite the disadvantage, he holds his ground as Hitoshi advances, both men ready for the clash. Hitoshi lunges, but his attack is met with a sharp clang as the swordsman parries, their blades locked. The move, however, was a feint. Hitoshi barges forward, closing the distance. The swordsman realizes with a start that Hitoshi has intentionally entered unarmed combat range and is winding up for a left jab. He drives his shoulder into his opponent's chest. Hitoshi realizes with satisfaction that he was able to close the attack range and immediately considers what to do next. He ducks under the scarred swordsman's guard with surprising speed, a move that catches his opponent completely off guard. Continuing his forward momentum, Hitoshi presses his body close, getting inside the effective range of the man's long sword and neutralizing his primary weapon. He drives the swordsman backward across the training yard, the larger man stumbling to maintain his footing against the relentless pressure. With a sharp motion, Hitoshi snaps his hand upward, delivering a forceful palm heel strike to the swordsman's chin, sending the man's head reeling back. Before his opponent can recover, Hitoshi hooks his leg around the man's ankle and twists, executing a perfect takedown. The swordsman's head hits the stone pavers with a solid thud, the impact radiating outwards. Hitoshi stands over his defeated sparring partner, the match decisively concluded by unarmed skill. Wiping his brow, he reflects on the fight. He considers his opponent an impressive man, realizing his own victory was only possible because closing the distance isn't a valued tactic in this world. He thinks to himself that things would have gone badly if not for the combat experience he accumulated back in Japan. Later, at a shop, the hooded proprietor asks Hitoshi if he is all right, noting he seems quite worn out recently. Hitoshi explains that he has to constantly fight for his life, which is why he has so much equipment to sell. The shopkeeper expresses his gratitude for the business and hands over a pouch as payment. With his payment secured, Hitoshi departs from the shop and walks down the street. He walks with his hood pulled up, reflecting that with this simple disguise, he has adapted quite well to the harsh realities of this world. With that thought, his eyes narrow in concentration. He knows it is critical to pay close attention here. The slums are a lawless district, and a moment of inattention could be fatal. This district operates on its own terms. The dirty money that the country's authorities cannot control is offered up to the local leadership in exchange for exemption from the law. The boss of the organization that controls the slums deals directly with the feudal lord. As Hitoshi observes, a bearded man notes his intense stare. Though called lawless, the district isn't entirely chaotic, likely due to the boss's own regulations, making it a paradise for scoundrels free from the kingdom's reach. Beyond the lack of official law, the sanitation is poor, though not much different from the rest of the city. However, there are more unsettling sights, like mysterious bags left on the ground, seeping red liquid. It's not that bodies are left to rot. In the slums, everything is recycled. Bones are burned to powder and sold as fertilizer or low-grade alchemy ingredients. Hair is fashioned into wigs. Even the dead are a commodity, exchanged for money. Walking through the seemingly deserted streets, Hitoshi feels the constant sensation of being watched. He passes a butcher's stall, remembering the grim warning. You should never eat meat from the slums. The haphazardly constructed buildings create poor visibility, forcing him to keep his sense presence skill active at full blast just to remain aware of the figures lurking in the shadows around him. The feeling is deeply familiar, akin to walking through a forest where monsters secretly gather, a place teeming with unseen predators. He takes a heavy step forward. He wouldn't have come to this dangerous place if he could have avoided it. Moving while on high alert after defeating a strong enemy is exhausting, and all he wants is to leave the slums and finally catch his breath. He walks through a narrow, grimy alley, his form concealed by a simple hooded cloak. He understands the grim reality of this place. Smuggling illicit equipment is a key source of funding for the slums organizations, and to avoid territorial disputes, one must deal directly with a pawn shop. He tries to reassure himself, thinking that he's been doing well so far and that everything will be fine. A tense look remains on his face, his eyes scanning his surroundings. He reaches an archway marking the exit of the slums. Pausing, he extends his senses and confirms that there is no presence nearby. A wave of relief washes over him as he realizes he was able to leave the dangerous area safely. His relief solidifies into a plan. Now, all that's left is to return to the guild. He steps through the stone archway, passing by large sacks piled against the wall. He continues down the empty cobblestone path, putting distance between himself and the slum's entrance. As he walks on, the alley remains quiet and seemingly deserted. Suddenly, his eyes widen in shock. A brutish, sneering man in a matching hood appears beside him, his voice dripping with malice as he mockingly thanks Hitoshi for all his money. The thug lunges, his hand clamping down hard on Hitoshi's shoulder from behind. He yanks Hitoshi back, the sudden force pulling the hood away to reveal his captive's startled face. He is caught off guard as the thug drives a heavy kick into his midsection, the impact echoing in the narrow alley. The force of the blow sends him stumbling, and the thug immediately follows up, shoving him hard towards the ground. But in a sudden reversal, the thug collapses onto the cobblestones, unmoving. Hitoshi remains standing, hunched over and clutching his stomach in pain. His strength gives out, and he falls to his knees, panting as he stares at the downed assailant. A sharp, searing pain draws his attention downward. He looks to see the hilt of a dagger protruding from his abdomen, the blade buried deep. The shock gives way to a dreadful realization. The thug must have used a skill to hide his presence. He had let his guard down completely after leaving the slums, a fatal mistake. Gritting his teeth against the pain, he staggers forward, one hand pressed against the wound, leaving his defeated foe behind. He leans against a wall for support, cursing his own carelessness. Shit, what did I do? He thinks, his vision blurring. But a flicker of determination cuts through the pain. He has to get to the clinic. Somehow, he must reach it. He forces one foot in front of the other. As he stumbles toward his destination, a sudden commotion from the direction of the clinic building catches his attention. He stumbles, his vision blurring. Looking down at his hand, he sees dark, spreading blotches on his skin. A horrifying realization dawns on him. It couldn't be just the stab wound. It had to be poison. The toxin acts with terrifying speed. The world lurches and spins around him, the alleyway's walls and rooftops tilting into a disorienting blur as his strength gives out. His eyes widen in a final moment of shocked awareness, his body completely failing him. He hits the cold cobblestones with a heavy thud, his body now still and unmoving on the hard ground. From a distance, his form is a small, solitary shape against the vast, indifferent stone. Just like that, the curtain. A man's head emerges from a large, roughly tied sack. He awakens with a start, his eyes wide with confusion. A single thought forms in his disoriented mind. Where is he? The scene shifts violently. He is submerged in murky water, his body being pulled down by the grasping hands of several gaunt, lifeless figures. A desperate cry escapes him as he sinks, his hand reaching out one last time before disappearing beneath the surface. His senses give way to a chaotic blur, a descent into static and nothingness. Then, only darkness. Out of the oppressive black, a single, distant form becomes visible. It is the man, now lying curled in a fetal position within the vast, empty void. He shivers uncontrollably, his body trembling. The cold is absolute, freezing him to his core. As he lies helpless, a chilling thought pierces his consciousness. He wonders if this is the consequence of a murderer's sin, questioning if he is simply fated to die like this. The thought spirals into a dark acceptance. He questions if his life from now on will just be an accumulation of more sins. Clenching his fist in the darkness, he comes to a grim conclusion. He has certainly sinned. He remained hunched in the oppressive darkness, a solitary figure consumed by exhaustion. His thoughts echoed in the void, a litany of despair. He had enough. He was tired of living, tired of this world, and no longer cared about anything. His despair curdled into a bitter curse against everyone and everything, concluding that the world was populated only by worthless people. In the end, he lamented, he had gained absolutely nothing. As this final, bleak thought settled, his hand, resting on the unseen floor, clenched into a tight fist, knuckles white with frustration. He squeezed his eyes shut, a single bead of sweat or a tear tracing a path down his temple, a physical manifestation of his utter desolation. Suddenly, the darkness receded. He found himself in a stark white void, now clad only in his loincloth. Before him, a dark, rectangular slate materialized from nothing. A voice, disembodied and calm, echoed in the emptiness, questioning his declaration. You gained nothing? As it spoke, words appeared etched on the slate's surface. Skills. Karate. His gaze fixed on the slate, his expression shifting from despair to stunned confusion. He stared at the undeniable proof before him. As he processed this, a memory flashed, reflected in the surface of his wide eye. A scene of camaraderie, of shared laughter and drink. The memory sharpened into focus. A lively tavern, him at a table with his comrades, raising their mugs in a joyous toast. A moment of pure connection from his past. The voice returned, turning his own bitter words back on him with a simple, piercing question that hung in the white void. There's only shitty bastards? His eyes widened, the memory of camaraderie still fresh in his mind. The white void around him seemed to pulse with a silent energy. From that energy, a glowing silhouette of a woman coalesced before him, a silent observer in the stark emptiness. The silhouette then dissolved, replaced by another vision. The face of a young woman, her expression one of pure, unadulterated joy and warmth. At the sight of her, his composure finally broke. Tears welled in his eyes, tracing paths of sorrow down his face. The white void vanished, plunging him into a thick, black, viscous liquid that rippled around him like a primordial swamp. With a desperate surge, his hand burst through the surface, clawing at the air as the sludge tried to pull him under. He emerged, gasping for breath, his face now covered by a thick beard and his hair grown long and shaggy. He was trapped, waist-deep in the suffocating mire. From the depths of the swamp, other figures rose, mud-caked bodies with hollow eyes, their hands grabbing at his limbs, trying to drag him back into the abyss. A fire ignited in his eyes, replacing despair with defiance. He roared, rejecting their pull, shouting that he refused to give up, that this was no way to treat him. With a final, guttural cry proclaiming his will to live, he drove his fist into the head of the nearest creature, shattering it in a spray of dark sludge. He roars his defiance from within the grasping mire. Now clad in a hooded tunic and trousers, he declares that curses and evil spirits are meaningless to him, vowing to send anyone who interferes flying. With that furious declaration, he is launched skyward, propelled from the dark swamp into an empty, gray void. He continues his ascent, face set in a grimace of effort, his bearded jaw clenched as he reaches for a destination beyond his sight. His hand finally touches a surface of pure light. As he pushes through, his expression shifts to one of wide-eyed shock, the darkness of his ordeal giving way. He becomes a streak of light, hurtling through the space between worlds. His trajectory ends abruptly, depositing him in the physical world before a quaint, half-timbered building in a seemingly peaceful town. From within the house, a door creaks open. A woman's voice announces cheerfully that she is heading out to the shops. The speaker, the young pharmacist Belle, emerges and starts down the stone steps, carrying her foraging basket. She stops short on the street, letting out a small gasp of surprise. Her path is blocked by the prone form of a man lying on the cobblestones. It is Hitoshi. The beard is gone, but he wears the same tunic from his escape, lying motionless and face down on the cold stone path. He lay unconscious on the cobblestone street, his sudden appearance bringing a young woman to a halt. Her woven basket sat on the ground beside her simple shoes. Her voice cut through the quiet street, a desperate cry for aid. "Someone please," she yelled, her plea echoing against the stone walls. Though he was unconscious, her urgent shouts of "hurry" seemed to penetrate the encroaching darkness, a faint sound in the vast emptiness of his mind. From the depths of his fading awareness, a single, powerful instinct surfaced, a defiant thought against the encroaching void. I will live. This flicker of will dragged forth a memory of the event that brought him to this state, the cold, hard steel of a sword being pulled from his torso. As he relived the moment, lying on the ground, the realization was simple and stark. He finally understood. He had been stabbed. The memory faded, replaced by a new, terrifying sensation. He was no longer on the ground, but adrift, and he was sinking. He felt himself being pulled down, descending into the deepest recesses of his own consciousness, a helpless fall into oblivion. His body tumbled through a featureless, gray void. The light of the living world, if it was ever there, was now gone, leaving only the long fall into darkness. Below him, a turbulent surface of pure blackness churned, waiting to claim him as he plunged toward it. He found himself suddenly submerged to his waist in a swirling, viscous mire. A gasp escaped him as he struggled to find his footing in the thick sludge, his body clad in an unfamiliar hooded garment. As he raised a hand from the muck, a thick, dark droplet splattered onto his open palm. Before he could process this, the surface of the mire broke violently before him, and a massive, grotesque hand formed from the very same mud lunged into the air. He let out a cry of shock as the muddy appendage slammed down, enveloping his head and shoulders in its crushing grip. From a churning darkness, a face emerged, a mud-caked visage with hollow, white eyes and a mouth stretched into a horrifying, cackling grin. The creature's hand tightened its hold, pressing down on him with immense force, trying to drag him under. He fought back, thrashing against not just one, but a writhing pile of the mud creatures that now swarmed him, his fist connecting with a sickening squelch. As he struggled, the faces of the dead materialized from the sludge, their voices echoing in his mind. They were the villagers he had killed, their mud-streaked faces contorted in rage as they screamed accusations, calling him a murderer who killed them. More faces surfaced around him, a chorus of the damned. Their hands reached for him from the vortex of mud, their voices promising that he would be cursed. A profound darkness, silent and absolute. The void persists, an endless expanse of black. From the nothingness, a shape begins to resolve, the rough, wooden planks of ceiling. Consciousness returns. Hitoshi Nozaki's eyes open. He lies on his back in a soft bed, a full, dark beard now covering his jaw and chin. He is alive. He turns his head slightly, taking in his surroundings. A voice from the side asks if he has finally woken up. He lies in a simple room, sunlight streaming through a window, wondering where he is. The voice belongs to Claire. She stands by a small table, preparing something in a bowl, and informs him that he collapsed right in front of the clinic. She turns to face him, her expression serious. She explains that while his stab wound was shallow, a potent poison had coursed through his entire body. It is a great relief, she notes, that he survived. He processes her words, his gaze distant. Clarin-san, he murmurs, a wave of relief washing over him as he realizes, I see. I made it. A sudden realization strikes him, his eyes widening. That girl. He begins, then turns to Claire, who is now seated by his bed. He formally thanks her for picking him up. Claire deflects his gratitude with a wry smile. She tells him that if he's grateful, he should thank that girl. She explains that for the past 3 days, Belle alone took care of everything for him, even his bedpan, since she was the one who found him. She touches Hitoshi's cheek, a blush rising to her own as she explains that the poison has been flushed out and his wound is already closed. Lying in bed, he winces, amazed at his complete recovery. He looks at her, wondering what kind of person she is, while she seems flustered, thinking this is the second time she's been in such a close situation with him. He then clarifies that it was never his intention to cause any trouble. He assures her that he will leave as soon as he has expressed his thanks. In response, Claire raises a hand, her expression turning serious. She firmly instructs him not to associate with Belle any further. She continues, stating that while he likely understands, she must repeat her warning. Hitoshi quietly agrees, but Claire presses on, informing him that the situation he's in is far from improving. In fact, it's getting worse. Having delivered her message, Claire turns to leave, stating that since his medical fees have been properly paid, she will take her leave. As a parting shot, she tells him not to get stabbed again. As she departs, Hitoshi sits up on the edge of the bed. His gaze falls upon a knife resting on a nearby table, the very weapon that wounded him. He internally remarks that it's a fine blade. A shame it was stuck in his stomach. Claire's voice calls back, telling him to make sure he takes it with him. A sudden, faint sound catches his attention, his eyes widening slightly. He looks towards the source and sees a fleeting image, the silhouette of Belle walking away into the darkness. Moments later, the clinic door creaks open. Belle stands in the threshold, pausing to cast one last, worried glance back into the room before she finally departs. The young woman, Belle, stands at the doorway of the room where Hitoshi Nozaki is recovering. He sits up in bed, looking towards her. His gaze is intense as he watches her, taking in her presence. She reacts with a hint of embarrassment, bringing her hands up to cover her mouth as a bead of sweat forms on her temple. A moment later, she lowers her hands, revealing a bright, relieved smile, though a single tear traces a path down her cheek. Seeing this, Hitoshi's own expression softens into a smile. He thinks to himself that a smile suits her best, noting that this is the second time he has seen it. Out loud, he offers her his sincere thanks. He then explains that his situation has become more dangerous than before, referencing the fact that he was suddenly stabbed with a knife in the middle of a street. He acknowledges that it's just as Claire had warned. Hitoshi concludes that to protect her smile, he must leave as soon as possible. He worries that if anyone thinks they are close, she will inevitably be put in harm's way. Having made his decision, he dresses and meets Belle outside. As he prepares to depart, he begins to say his goodbyes, but she simply responds with a quiet yes. She stops him, holding out a small packet. Here, she offers, before putting a finger to her lips and adding that it's a secret she taught him. She explains that it's an antidote and its recipe. Hitoshi accepts it with a simple word of thanks. He stares at the gift, a bead of sweat rolling down his temple as a realization dawns on him. This isn't just payment or a simple thank you. It's interest. Belle watches him, her expression filled with concern. He recalls her expression, thinking to himself that, as expected, a smile suits her best. The memory of her bright smile brings a faint, wistful one to his own face. After that moment, they separated. He walked away without saying, "See you," or even a simple goodbye. His journey eventually led him to a large, timber-framed establishment in another town. There, he sat alone at an outdoor table, nursing a drink. His solitude was interrupted as a plate bearing several large roasted meat chops was placed before him. "Time to eat," he muttered, ready to dig in. The sight caught the attention of a burly, bald man at a nearby table, Gons, who was sitting with a guild receptionist and a young girl, Mia. Recognizing the man, Gons bellowed, "Boy, if it ain't Yajin," and swiftly snatched a piece of meat from Hitoshi's plate. He leaned forward with a smug grin, questioning Hitoshi's recent absence. "Why haven't I seen you around?" he taunted. "Did you shack up with some woman?" Hitoshi held up the small blade he carried. "I was stabbed by this, which was coated in poison, and ended up hospitalized," he stated flatly. Internally, however, he corrected himself. That wasn't what happened. He sits at a tavern table, listening with disbelief as the burly adventurer, Gons, laughs off a near-death experience as a mere nuisance. While his other companion, Kimin, casually remarks that it's good to eat what one likes. Hitoshi slams his hand down, declaring it madness and questioning if such life-threatening events are truly an everyday thing for adventurers. The tense atmosphere shatters when a young boy in a hooded cloak suddenly appears, pressing the tip of a knife against Kimin's back. Gons reacts with alarm, identifying the threat as poison, while the boy, Rise, greets Kimin with a chillingly casual, "Yo." The boy's face is a mask of grim determination as he holds the blade steady. He mutters a name, Katso the Beggar, while his eyes remain fixed forward. The knife's pommel is ornate, hinting at a story of its own. Hitoshi stares, confused by the name, prompting Rise to clarify. He explains that Katso the Beggar is the name of the knife's owner, an assassin. He adds that the blade is nice and sharp, a fact to which he can personally attest. The revelation leaves Hitoshi speechless. In stark contrast to Hitoshi's shock, Kimin remains utterly unfazed, dismissing the assassination attempt as simply the usual. Hitoshi can only stammer in disbelief. An assassin? His mind races with panic. He frantically wonders why an assassin would be targeting him, and when he could have possibly made such an enemy. He questions if it's an order from the slum's boss or some other formal request he's unaware of. Kimin cuts through his friend's spiraling thoughts with a calm, simple explanation. "It's nothing personal," he says. "The attempt is just for chump change." The immediate danger having passed, the scene settles into a strange normalcy. The would-be assassin, Rise, now sits at the table with Hitoshi and his intended target, Kimin, who once again remarks that this is all just the usual. But as they sit, a sharp pain lances through Hitoshi. He winces, clutching his stomach, a stark reminder of his still precarious physical condition. He decides to leave, and Kimin encourages him, telling him not to push himself and to go rest. He promises they will celebrate Hitoshi's recovery another time, and Hitoshi quietly agrees before departing. As he prepares to depart the tavern, he addresses those remaining at the table by name, Kimin, and the armored adventurer, Al. The young boy, Rise, continues to eat his meal, seemingly unfazed by the departure. He offers a simple word of thanks. His attention then shifts to the burly Gons, who is seated nearby with the woman with braided hair, and he acknowledges him as well before turning to leave. With his farewells made, the heavy wooden door of the tavern swings shut behind him, the sound echoing his departure. Alone with his thoughts, his internal status screen manifests before his eyes. It confirms his current state. Level 15, with skills in karate, sense presence, hide presence, and poison resistance. The titles he has acquired are also listed: New Species of Goblin, M-shaped balding in progress, and Monster. His focus narrows on a particular line item. He notes internally that he did, in fact, receive the poison resistance skill from the recent ordeal. Now, back in his sparse room, he sits on the edge of his bed, contemplating this development. He had held a sliver of hope that the incident might have triggered a level up, but he concedes that, as expected, it did not happen. As the thought settles, his eyes sharpen, and his foot tenses with a sudden, involuntary spasm. The tension subsides, and he falls back onto the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling, the lingering effects of his condition evident. As he lies there, a stark realization crystallizes in his mind, brought on by the day's events. He sees that no matter how perilous his current circumstances are, he is on an unsustainable path. He cannot continue this way. If he does, he knows with certainty that someday he will inevitably fall into the abyss. He lays still in his bed, staring at the ceiling as his mind pieced together the grim logistics of his situation. To break past the level 15 ceiling, he would have to hunt a rank 4 monster. And to even attempt such a feat, a specific tool was required, a weapon forged from black steel. The thought solidified, his expression hardening with resolve. A black steel weapon. With newfound determination burning in his eyes, he made a vow to himself. He would get his hand. In the city, a tall, timber-framed building stands out, its facade adorned with a crest of 2 crossed swords behind a crowned shield. A sign is unfurled before its sturdy wooden door as a voice from within booms, inviting onlookers to behold the contents of the establishment. Inside, a cheerful weaponsmith presents his wares to Hitoshi Nozaki. Mounted on the wall are an impressive poleaxe, a long sword, and a dagger, marking this as a place for those seeking the tools of combat, a chapter in the art of an underling. Hitoshi's gaze is immediately drawn to one particular item, a formidable weapon forged from black steel. He internally reels at the implied cost, realizing it must be equivalent to a luxury vehicle from his old world, far more than the light motor vehicle he had realistically budgeted for. The weaponsmith confirms his thoughts, explaining that only the very well-off, such as a noble's illegitimate child or the young master of a major shop, could ever afford such a piece. He adds that being able to sell even one per year is considered a success. Hitoshi listens, a bead of sweat forming on his temple as the reality sets in. It's not an amount a commoner can gather. The shopkeeper's eyes narrow slightly as he asks what Hitoshi actually needs, implying he can't just be window shopping. Hitoshi understands. Only the privileged class, those who monopolize wealth and knowledge, can afford such things. Instead of the grand axe, his hand closes around a much smaller, more affordable purchase. He examines the item, a hidden weapon, similar to a straight shuriken. He reflects that he only intended to scout the shop, but ended up buying it anyway, certain he'll find an opportunity to use it. Leaving the shop, he walks along the cobblestone street, his mind heavy with a new understanding. He now knows he needs far more money for a black steel weapon than he ever expected. The thought of saving honestly seems utterly unfeasible, and he is left to wonder what he should do now. He grapples with his financial predicament, realizing that the more money he saves, the more he has to protect. The longer this process takes, the more his life is endangered. He concludes that he must find a way to earn a large sum all at once. His thoughts turn to his work, wondering if there is a huge quest available that could be completed in a short, concentrated period. His expression is tense, his mind racing for a solution. Suddenly, an excited shout from behind him breaks his concentration. One of his companions is buzzing with anticipation. This jogs Hitoshi's memory. He recalls that there is indeed a meeting about their next quest scheduled for today. The scene shifts to the meeting itself. Hitoshi sits at a long wooden table with his party members, the burly Gons, the young Rise, and their leader, Kimin, who presides over the gathering with a document in hand. Kimin begins the briefing, addressing the group. He explains that since it has been a while, he wants this next quest to focus on regaining their senses rather than on their earnings. Hitoshi listens, his expression somber. He continues, laying out their options. They can choose from 3 different quests, but the target monster is the same for all of them. He glances over at his companions as he speaks. As Kimin details the plan, Gonza's face twists into a deep scowl, his displeasure with the training-focused proposal evident. The burly man abruptly stands, turning his back on the meeting. The sudden movement startles Hitoshi, who looks over his shoulder, questioning the interruption. As Gons walks away, Rise asks where he is going. Kimin calmly replies that Gons is just going to the toilet, adding that they will be training as they undertake the long-distance quest. With Gons gone, a tense silence falls over the remaining members of the party. Hitoshi sits quietly, processing the clear division within their ranks. He watches the brutish man stomp away as Kimin approaches, asking what happened and exclaiming over Gonza's foul mood. Kimin admits he's scared witless. He explains that recently, one of the women Gons is infatuated with went to another man's place, adding with a cynical smile that once the money stops, so does the relationship. He considers this drama a nice bonus. His own party, a woman with a long braid, another in a hood, and a fellow swordsman, walks cheerfully down the street, having just returned from a quest where they unexpectedly ran into a clay boar. Hitoshi's expression sours. He mutters that things are about to get ugly and decides to get a drink. Meanwhile, Kimin and the braided woman share a happy moment, with her expressing gladness that she followed him to the countryside. At another table, Gons and Rise sit together. Rise comments that they were lucky, as clay boars don't normally appear in those kinds of places. Gons remains silent, staring into his mug. From his seat, Hitoshi observes Kimin's group celebrating. He internally criticizes their carelessness, thinking they are too inattentive for beginners and fail to notice the measuring gazes around them. He grimly concludes that those who aren't careful won't survive. As if to prove his point, a heavy boot slams onto the floor beside the celebrating party's table, the sound echoing through the tavern. Hitoshi's eyes narrow. He acknowledges that they more or less survived today, but his thought trails off as he watches the inevitable confrontation begin. Gons looms over their table, his shadow falling upon a startled Kimin. The brutish man roars, telling the shitty little kids to stop their yapping. The full force of Gonza's fury is visible on his face, eyes wide and wild, his features twisted into a mask of pure rage. His furious outburst startles the celebrating adventurers. Kimin, Rise, and their two female companions look up from their table, their expressions shifting from revelry to shocked confusion. Kimin slams his hands on the table and leaps to his feet, shouting back defiantly. He questions what's wrong with being noisy in a bar and aggressively asks if the man wants to fight. The challenge is met with silent fury. Gonz's hand tightens around the grip of his weapon, his face contorted in a mask of pure, simmering rage. As the tension thickens, Hitoshi moves, placing himself directly between Gonz and Kimin's party, his back to them as he faces the volatile group. From Kimin's perspective, he is now confronted by two men, the hulking, axe-wielding Gonz and the calm, dark-haired Hitoshi who has stepped forward. Mistaking him for an ally of Gonz, Kimin shouts, demanding to know what he wants. Hitoshi simply raises his hands in a placating gesture, suggesting they calm down and get along, as he places a hand on Kimin's shoulder. Before Kimin can react, Hitoshi pulls him into a sudden, firm embrace, a seemingly friendly gesture that conceals the short sword now pressed against the adventurer's side. The embrace is a feint. Hitoshi's hand, held in a rigid formation, presses deliberately into Kimin's torso. The effect is instantaneous. All the air rushes out of Kimin's lungs, and he doubles over, gasping and completely incapacitated without a single visible wound. Hitoshi looks down at the man, telling him to get a grip because his legs are shaking, and orders him to sit down. He internally recalls the technique, a palm strike to the solar plexus, timed with the opponent's breath. Though it looked like a simple press, the impact from the heel of his wrist was transmitted deep into Kimin's innards, neutralizing him. He leans over the gasping man, his voice a low taunt. He points out that the man tried to act like a prince in front of a woman, but is now shaking in his boots after being shouted at. The man on the ground can only stammer in confusion. As he straightens up, he examines a small, embroidered pouch he has apparently taken from the man. He then turns his attention toward the burly adventurer, Gonz, presenting the pouch as an offering. He announces that the defeated man wants forgiveness and is therefore offering to pay for drinks. Gonz merely grunts, his expression stern as he observes the scene, noting that such small fry cannot withstand his extraordinary presence. Gonz's stern face breaks into a smug smile, satisfied that the man gets it. Behind him, Hitoshi grins, privately wondering how Gonz so readily accepted the simple explanation. As Hitoshi and Gonz walk away, Kimin's party rushes to his side. The braided-haired woman asks what happened, but Kimin can only stammer. Another party member shouts in dismay that those two left with their money. Hearing this, the braided-haired woman's expression hardens into a sharp, furious glare directed at the departing pair. Hitoshi glances back, feeling her intense gaze. He thinks to himself that she shouldn't glare at him like that. After all, he's the reason her companion is still able to live. Sometime later, the tension has vanished. From another table, a recovered Kimin cheerfully waves, calling Hitoshi Yajin and wishing him well. He tells his own companion, Al, that he's leaving the quest in his hands. At their table, Gonz throws an arm around Hitoshi, loudly declaring that it's time to drink. Hitoshi looks on with a weary expression. Taking a sip from his mug, Hitoshi reflects that he has somehow earned Gonz's favor. He considers that in a city rife with lies and betrayal, a straightforward person like Gonz, however difficult to handle, is a precious thing. He had thought the day's troubles were concluded. Kimin's party departed, believing they had taught a lesson for a small price. The woman with the braided hair suggested they go back, and Kimin agreed, marking the end of what should have been a happy day where no blood was shed. But that is not how it was to be. In the deepening gloom of a nearby forest, a bearded man pressed himself against the trunk of a tree, lying in wait. His eyes, wide with surprise above his dark mask, darted to the side as a sudden sound broke the silence. An arrow sliced through the night air. The projectile found its mark, embedding itself deep in Hitoshi's shoulder and pinning him violently against a tree. He grunted in pain, sweat beading on his brow. From the shadows, another ambusher wearing a wide-brimmed hat spotted him and yelled to his comrades, ordering them to surround their target. Through his pained vision, he saw the spectral forms of numerous armed adventurers closing in from all directions. With a surge of adrenaline, he ripped himself free and vaulted over a rocky ledge, the arrow still lodged in his flesh. He now understood the situation. 8 adventurers were behind him, all aiming for his life. His face hardened with resolve. With enemies in front of him as well, he pushed forward, running for his life through the hostile terrain. He peers from the edge of the woods, his silhouette stark against the tree line. Before him, scattered through the forest, dozens of glowing figures, the ambushers, are visible, their presence a wall of light in the darkness. The sight of the closing net triggers a jarring memory. The grotesque, pale face of a goblin, followed by the swift, brutal arc of a weapon. The memory intensifies, replaying a chaotic struggle against a horde of goblins in the suffocating dark, their pale forms swarming from all sides. Snapping back to the present, he breaks into a desperate sprint, running through an endless, featureless void. He continues to flee, but the void fills with the ghostly shapes of his pursuers. They are everywhere, closing in from above, below, and all around, cutting off any hope of escape. His flight ceases. Sweat beads on his brow as the crushing reality sets in. He is surrounded. A single, desperate question echoes in his mind. Why did it become like an adventurer's boot stomps onto the forest floor, pressing into the soft earth as the hunt continues? Hidden beneath the thick, gnarled roots of a tree, Hitoshi Nozaki holds his breath. Above him, one of his pursuers stands perplexed, shouting in frustration about where his target could have possibly disappeared. He remains concealed, sweat beading on his brow as he seethes. He curses their meticulousness, wondering what he did to deserve this relentless pursuit. His mind races back to how the day began. He had just gotten his hands on a straight shuriken and was simply heading to the forest for his usual training when he was suddenly ambushed and chased down. Elsewhere, one of the pursuers, a shaggy-haired man with a spear, spots something. He calls out, noting that he's found traces of Nozaki's path. He admits to his companions that he had let his guard down, thinking their quarry was mere rabble, but now concedes that their target is quite skilled. Nozaki, still hidden, assesses his grim situation. His pursuers have effectively blocked his escape routes on 3 sides. The only path left open to him is to the west, deeper into the forest. However, that direction presents a massive obstacle, a sprawling goblin encampment teeming with creatures. The horrifying realization dawns on him. He is trapped, caught between the goblins ahead and the adventurers closing in from behind. He is in terrible trouble. He quickly analyzes his pursuers. He can't be sure of their motives, but their murderous intent is unmistakable. They've come to kill him. He reasons that they aren't after money, as any reward would be insignificant when split among 8 people. A grim resolve forms in his mind. Even if he manages to slip away now, they will definitely come for him again. He concludes that it would be better to settle this here and now, turning the tables and fighting on his own home ground. He reconsiders his dire circumstances, a realization dawning on him. This desperate situation could be a great opportunity. With renewed determination, he decides it's all or nothing. He will bet his life in order to survive. With this new resolve, he dashes through the forest. From behind a tree, one of his pursuers, the shaggy-haired man, spots him on the move. The man's eyes narrow in on his target. He raises a hand to his mouth and shouts to his companions, alerting them that he has found their quarry and is pointing out his location. In response to the call, an arrow flies through the air, landing with a sharp thud in the dirt just behind Hitoshi's running feet. The near miss does not break his stride, but he pants heavily, the strain of the chase etched onto his face. Reaching the edge of a short, bushy cliff, he throws himself over the side without hesitation. He lands squarely in the middle of a goblin encampment. The small, monstrous creatures are startled by his sudden intrusion, their daily activities coming to an abrupt halt. Their surprise quickly curdles into hostility. Several goblins turn to face him, their unsettling, pupil-less eyes locking onto the unexpected visitor. Ignoring the new threats surrounding him, Hitoshi continues his forward momentum, his foot stomping down hard as he charges through the camp. As he runs, he unleashes a furious, guttural roar, a challenge to all his enemies, both behind and before him. He puts his roar into action, seizing a nearby goblin. With one arm around its neck and the other hoisting its legs, he lifts the creature, turning it into a makeshift shield. In a single, brutal motion, he slams the goblin he holds into the ground with a heavy thud. The impact kicks up a cloud of dust, sending the other goblins in the clearing stumbling back in disarray. Their initial shock quickly fades. The remaining goblins stare, their blank eyes narrowing as collective rage begins to build within the small horde. Just then, the pursuing adventurers burst into the clearing. The shaggy-haired man, spear at the ready, spots his target and yells for his comrades to press the attack. Hitoshi glances over his shoulder, his expression one of momentary surprise as he registers their arrival. His surprise is answered by the goblins. Letting out a unified shriek, the entire nest ignores him and swarms towards the new intruders, their clubs and claws raised. Panic erupts among the pursuers. The adventurer in scale male shouts for an immediate withdrawal, while the shaggy-haired man curses, realizing with dawning horror that they have charged directly into a goblin nest. Hitoshi observes the chaos, his face hardening. He concludes that escape is impossible. The goblins' noses are too sharp, and they will not let anyone leave. As a goblin shrieks and lunges at him with a crude club, he accepts the reality of his situation. There is no other option. They can only fight. While Hitoshi braced for the goblin attack, his pursuers were already locked in combat. The man in scale male roared, swinging his sword at a screeching goblin. The clearing had erupted into chaos. Surrounded by a horde of goblins, the scale-mailed adventurer bellowed an order to his comrades. Kill them all. He carved through the swarm, his blade finding its mark again and again, while his shielded companion, Al, held the line against the frenzied creatures. Another of their party, a man with long hair, casually decapitated a goblin. He scoffed at the creatures, dismissing them as nothing more than small fries. He smirked with confidence, believing that no matter how many goblins there were, they posed no real threat. His arrogance vanished as his eyes fell upon a new figure in the fray. He could only stare, dumbfounded, at the sheer size of Hitoshi Nozaki. Before the adventurer could process the sight, Hitoshi's fist slammed into his face, the impact brutally deforming his features. Hitoshi stood over the man's crumpled body, his gaze cold. He growled a declaration to the others, making it clear he was not one of the monsters they were fighting. As Zhao and the scale-mailed adventurer remained occupied with the goblin swarm, Hitoshi moved silently behind the ladder, his presence masked by the chaos of battle. With the adventurer's own sword now in his hand, Hitoshi focused his intent and drove the blade deep into the man's back. A true fatal strike. He watches as the armored adventurer, Al, remains locked in a desperate struggle, roaring in frustration as he fends off a single, small goblin. The chaos of the battle continues around them. Amidst the fray, another of the pursuers, the long-haired man, is caught completely unaware. A goblin shrieks as it swings a crude club from behind, aiming directly for the man's head. The weapon connects with a heavy, sickening thud. The adventurer crumples instantly, his body hitting the dirt as the club falls beside him. Hitoshi observes the swift, pathetic defeat and internally scoffs. How weak. In another part of the battlefield, a different adventurer sends a goblin flying with a powerful kick. He surveys the scene, realizing his initial expectations were wrong. He had anticipated a more chaotic battle, but it seems it will be over soon. The ability gap between the goblins and these so-called level 15 adventurers is simply too vast. He muses that even though he has only taken down 2 people himself, the outcome is already clear. As this thought crosses his mind, a sudden shift in the air makes him glance back. His eyes widen in sudden, stark surprise. A massive, clawed foot slams into the ground, its sheer size and monstrous form heralding the arrival of a new combatant. The remaining fighters, the archer, a shocked owl, the dazed long-haired man, and Hitoshi himself, all register the new presence. From his position on the ground, Hitoshi looks up at the colossal limb planted before him, understanding that the nature of the battle has just fundamentally changed. The creature is revealed, a hulking goblin champion, towering over its kin. It stands with an air of authority, flanked by 2 smaller goblins, one of them wearing a dark hood. A close view of the champion's face shows not the mindless rage of the other goblins, but a cold, focused intelligence. Its brow is furrowed, and its sharp eyes burn with grim purpose. He did not stand alone. Among his forces was a scarred, cunning-looking creature, a goblin variant with a hardened expression, chewing thoughtfully on a twig. As Hitoshi and the adventurers watched, they began to identify the new threats. One of them noted that this was a species of higher evolution, a hobgoblin, while another identified it as a mutated variant, a goblin warrior. Their attention, however, was quickly drawn to another figure emerging from the goblin ranks. The party's archer, shrouded in their hood, stared in disbelief, questioning what it could possibly be. They pulled back their hood slightly, confirming that this was the first time they had ever encountered such a creature. It was another mutated variant. The being that had captured their attention was a goblin mage, its face distinguished by wide, solid black eyes and a mouth full of sharp teeth. Meanwhile, Hitoshi, having found momentary safety behind the colossal leg of the goblin champion, watched the unfolding situation with grim focus. He felt secure for now, but wondered what the adventurers would do next. He watched the 6 adventurers, a grim-faced, long-haired man, a mustached veteran, and a younger, short-haired warrior, as they assessed their new opponents. The confrontation was set. The adventurers realized they were facing a coordinated goblin combo: the mage, the champion, and the warrior. The death match was about an adventurer, his face a mask of shock, gasps as a fatal wound erupts from his neck. He falls, revealing another comrade struck down behind him. A question hangs in the air. Shouldn't goblins be easily dispatched by a level 15 adventurer? The source of this overwhelming power is a massive, goblin-like creature. With a short white beard and an intelligent, focused gaze, he stares impassively at the carnage he has orchestrated. This goblin champion stands flanked by his subordinates, a common goblin and a hooded goblin mage with unsettling, solid black eyes. They form a formidable command unit. From the adventurer's perspective, the sheer scale of the champion is apparent. His massive foot dwarfs the remaining men, who stand ready but are clearly outmatched. Hidden high in the trees, Hitoshi Nozaki watches the unfolding battle. A look of pure amazement crosses his face as he whispers a single word: amazing. He mentally reconstructs the battle's opening. The adventurers from the vanguard and 2 in the rearguard faced a coordinated triple threat from a hobgoblin, a warrior, and a mage. The first to engage were the goblin frontlines. Hitoshi recalls the tactical surprise. The adventurers were caught in a pincer movement by a detached force of goblins hidden in the forest. He is surprised that goblins could execute such an organized maneuver. The ambush threw the adventurers into disarray. The hidden goblins struck the rearguard from behind, causing panic. One of the vanguard members turned to provide support, breaking their formation and giving the now uncontested goblin mage the opening it needed. Its hands crackling with power, the goblin mage unleashes a spell, shouting fireball. For Hitoshi, this is a momentous occasion. He is finally witnessing real magic in this new world. The fireball streaks across the battlefield, striking the mustached adventurer who had been engaging the goblin warrior. Watching from his perch, Hitoshi admits he was so excited by the display that he nearly fell from the tree. He watched as the warrior finished off the adventurer who had been engulfed in flames. With that death, only 5 people remained on the adventurer's side. The rear guard, having reorganized their forces, then began to vigorously mow down the lesser goblins. From that point, the adventurers launched their counterattack. With the smaller goblins dealt with, the tide of battle seemed to favor the hobgoblin's side. It appeared the battle would tilt to the adventurer's advantage, or so the observer thought. But then, an oddity arose in the goblins' movements. They ceased their attack on the rear guard and began a simultaneous charge toward the vanguard. Their new target was the back of the adventurer who was engaged with the hobgoblin. As the rear guard gave chase, 1 goblin was cut down, but 2 managed to escape the pursuit. The hobgoblin did not overlook the opening. While the adventurer stabbed 1 goblin through the head, the other clung tenaciously to his foot. A flicker of realization crossed the adventurer's face, a fatal, split-second understanding. In that instant of distraction, the massive goblin champion appeared behind him, its powerful hand enveloping his head. With a brutal twist, the champion tore the man's head from his shoulders as another adventurer watched, his face a mask of pure terror. He stands paralyzed, his back turned to the goblin champion. But the creature itself seems to turn away, revealing a deep, bleeding wound along its own spine from a previous encounter. The massive goblin glances over its shoulder with a cold, dismissive look before turning its attention away completely, a fatal miscalculation. In that instant, the adventurer surges forward, driving his sword deep into the goblin champion's back. The creature's mouth opens in a silent scream as the blade finds its mark. Its head snaps back in agony and rage, blood spraying from the fresh wound. A deafening roar of pure fury erupts from the wounded champion, a sound that echoes across the desolate battlefield. Observing from afar, Hitoshi Nozaki hears something different in that cry. To him, the shout reverberating across the field is not just of anger, but a wail for the allies who gave their lives to open this path. Despite the grievous injury, blood now trickling from its mouth, the goblin champion remains standing. The conflict has now been reduced to a 3-on-3 engagement, the outcome still hanging precariously in the balance. The battle lines are redrawn. The adventurer leader faces the wounded but enraged champion, while his 2 comrades, a swordsman and an archer, prepare to engage the remaining goblin warrior and mage. Another observer, a bearded man, analyzes the matchups. He surmises that the adventurer commanding the battle will likely face the large goblin 1-on-1, while the swordsman and archer are grouped into a 2-on-2 match against the warrior and mage. Hitoshi's eyes narrow, his focus absolute. He understands the razor's edge upon which this fight rests. The one who strikes first wins. The moment is now. On the battlefield, the goblin mage raised a hand, its mouth moving as it began to chant a powerful spell. Across from it, the archer confirmed he had a clear shot. His companion, the long-haired adventurer, thought to himself that the creature must have a tiny brain to take so long chanting, urging the archer to calm down and aim carefully. The archer decided to aim for the mage, intending to pierce its brain before the spell was complete. At the same time, the goblin warrior swung its blade at the long-haired adventurer, who was surprised the creature wasn't guarding its spell-casting ally. He loosed his arrow, confident that the goblin's incantation would not finish in time. The arrow streaked through the air, flying true towards the seemingly oblivious mage. At the last possible second, the goblin mage lifted its free hand, a small point of light flaring to life in its palm. The projectile slammed into the light, which erupted in a burst of energy, stopping the arrow cold. The dust settled to reveal the arrow lying harmlessly on the ground. The long-haired adventurer stared in utter disbelief, his guard completely down. His shot created a fatal opening. The goblin warrior let out a guttural cry as it lunged, and the adventurer screamed in agony. The warrior's blade sliced deep into the man's side, landing a devastating blow. From his vantage point, the bearded observer pieces together the goblin's strategy. He realizes with a grimace that the mage's first chant was deliberately extended. It was a feint, a tactic to throw off the adventurer's timing, making the second, faster spell a complete surprise. Confirming this deduction, the goblin mage, perched high in a tree, lets out a shriek of mockery. It taunts the humans, declaring that they lost a battle of wits. On the cliff's edge, the mustached adventurer can only watch. The archer, his plan in ruins, curses under his breath. His bow remains drawn, a testament to his now useless readiness. His frustration turns to panic as the goblin mage conjures a sphere of dark energy. Realizing his position has been revealed and he is now the target, the archer scrambles to get away. Below, the chaos continues. The short-haired adventurer crouches on the ground, attending to his wounded comrade, while the mustached adventurer looks down from the cliff above. He turns from the scene to face Hitoshi Nozaki. The adventurer nervously proposes an alliance, reasoning that the enemy of his enemy must be a friend. After a moment of silent consideration, Hitoshi agrees, stating he will lend a hand. His method of assistance is unexpected. With a powerful kick, Hitoshi sends a mustached adventurer flying from the cliff top, hurtling down towards the battle below. The short-haired adventurer on the ground looks up in shock. Realizing he is now alone and cornered, he curses his fate. The goblin warrior lets out a triumphant cry, its single eye fixed on its helpless prey. Having dealt with the adventurer, Hitoshi breaks into a sprint, charging directly towards the hulking goblin champion who stands as the enemy's centerpiece. As he runs, his mind calculates the situation. He assesses the goblin mage as physically weak. Without spells or a vanguard for protection, it's vulnerable. He concludes that he just needs to prevent it from chanting. Even throwing a simple stone would be enough to disrupt it. The goblin mage, target of the adventurer Hitoshi had thrown, stared forward with its unervingly black, pupil-less eyes. However, it was another combatant, the bearded observer, who closed the distance first. He assessed the creature, realizing it was just a normal goblin despite its apparent magical prowess. Without a moment's hesitation, his fist connected squarely with the creature's jaw. The force of the blow sent the goblin mage hurtling backward, where it crashed heavily onto the ground, silenced. Elsewhere on the chaotic battlefield, Hitoshi's attention was drawn to another skirmish. A goblin warrior loomed over a downed adventurer, its weapon raised for a final strike. His gaze then shifted to the true threat, the goblin champion. The massive creature let out a furious roar, but Hitoshi calmly assessed his opponent, realizing that while the champion was strong, its movements were large and telegraphed. He stood his ground as the champion crouched low, preparing to charge. With a sharp, sudden movement, Hitoshi's eyes locked onto his target. He made a quick, dismissive flicking motion with his hand, aimed directly at the champion's face. As the creature flinched from the feint, Hitoshi instantly exploited the opening, delivering a powerful kick straight to the side of its head. As his kick connected with the goblin champion, elsewhere on the battlefield another fight reached its brutal conclusion. A foot stomped down, crushing the life from the fallen goblin mage, and leaving a dark stain upon the dirt. The short-haired adventurer delivered a final, merciless punch to the downed goblin's head, ensuring the magic user would not threaten them again. Hitoshi felt the solid impact of his own attack. He was glad he had carefully analyzed the champion's movements beforehand. It was the key to creating the opening. The abrupt end of the commotion from the other skirmish caught his attention, and his head snapped to the side. His eyes narrowed slightly as he confirmed his suspicion. The fight over there was finished. The goblin champion staggered back, blood trickling from his mouth. He, too, sensed the loss of his comrade and grimaced, realizing he was the last one standing. Despite his injury, the champion stood his ground, a defiant silhouette on a small rise. Hitoshi turned his full attention back to the hulking creature. The two warriors locked eyes across the dusty ground. The goblin champion's expression was one of grim determination, but Hitoshi met it with calm certainty, stating aloud what he already knew. As expected, Hitoshi Nozaki's thoughts drift to the first hobgoblin he ever encountered. He had killed that one without a second thought, viewing it as nothing more than a monster. But this one was different. As he stared into the goblin champion's eye, he perceived an unmistakable sadness within it. He looked down for a moment, the weight of his actions settling upon him. He had brought this confrontation to pass. Across from him, the goblin champion's face contorted with a similar burden, as if thinking the very same thing, that this was all his fault. Nozaki's expression hardened, his hand clenching into a tight fist. The time for reflection was over. The goblin champion let out a furious roar, its maw gaping as it prepared to attack, its eye burning with rage. He stood his ground, watching his opponent with a steady, unwavering gaze. The massive creature swung its axe in a wide arc. Even from a distance, Nozaki could feel the incredible wind pressure generated by the attack. Its back muscles coiled with power. Nozaki knew that to have any chance, he would first have to find a way to get closer. He faces the goblin champion's downward swing, a flicker of surprise crossing his face as the massive axe descends. In that split second, he realizes the champion guarded with his weapon. The man instantly understands the weakness of being barehanded and has already formulated a counterattack. Acting on this insight, he pivots and drives a powerful kick into the goblin champion's lead leg, aiming to disrupt its stance. The blow connects solidly with the creature's thigh. The champion lets out a soft grunt, its face tightening in a grimace of pain and surprise. Having broken the champion's posture, he surges forward, moving inside the effective range of the massive axe. The champion, unable to swing its blade, thrusts the heavy pommel of its axe towards his face in a desperate, close-quarters counter. Simultaneously, the creature stomps its foot hard against the ground, trying to regain its balance and footing. With his opponent off balance, Nozaki ducks under the clumsy swing of the axe, now too close for the blade to find its mark. He gathers all his strength, his jaw clenched in exertion as he prepares to strike. The man unleashes a powerful right hook, connecting squarely with the goblin champion's jaw and sending a shockwave through the creature's body, lifting its foot from the ground. His fist connects, but the goblin champion merely staggers, absorbing the blow to his jaw without falling. He stares in disbelief. He had felt a solid impact through his hands, yet the creature remained standing. The resilience was unnatural. Before he can pull back, the champion's massive hand shoots out, clamping down on his extended arm. The grip tightens like a vice. Trapped, Nozaki finds himself face-to-face with the creature, which now holds the advantage. Unable to free his right arm, He pivots and drives his left fist into the champion's torso with a heavy thud. He feels the distinct crack of bone beneath his knuckles. A direct hit. The champion's ribs are broken, but the creature only grimaces, its eyes glinting as if to say the blow was expected, a triviality. A shudder of pure dread runs through Nozaki. The creature's tolerance for pain is monstrous. He knows he has to move to escape this instant. His realization comes too late. Ignoring its grievous injury, the goblin champion raises its massive, bladed weapon high into the air. He looks up, trapped and helpless, as the shadow of a descending weapon falls over him. The situation has become lethally dangerous. He watches, trapped, as the goblin champion grits his teeth, acknowledging his opponent's toughness. The creature begins a massive, wide swing, and Nozaki initially assumes it's a simple horizontal slash. But then he sees the champion's body twist unnaturally, realizing with dawning horror that this is something else entirely. Instead of completing the swing, the champion hurls his massive sword into the air, sending it spinning high above them. He stares upward, his mind struggling to process the unexpected maneuver. The realization hits him with the force of a physical blow. He cannot dodge what's coming. His eye widens as he sees the true attack vector. At that precise moment, a different weapon, a heavy, multi-pronged spear, is thrust toward him from an unseen source. The prongs slam into his shoulder, and he cries out in agony. The goblin champion stands just behind him, the architect of this complex, two-pronged assault. Before he can even process the pain from the impalement, the champion drives a brutal uppercut into his jaw, the impact staggering him completely. The goblin champion observes his handiwork, a flicker of acknowledgement for his opponent's battle instinct in his eyes. Nozaki, reeling, is stunned by a horrifying realization. The creature had just perfectly replicated the left uppercut he himself had used earlier, learning and adapting the move in the middle of their fight. He understands his predicament completely. He was so focused on the thrown sword that he couldn't guard against the hidden spear, leaving him open for the devastating follow-up. He absorbs a heavy blow to the side of his head, the force of the impact jarring him. The two combatants stand opposite each other in the dusty clearing, both showing signs of wear from the brutal exchange. Despite the hit, he remains standing, his gaze fixed and intense. He glances down at his own hand, knuckles scraped and bleeding from the repeated impacts. His opponent begins to speak, revealing an unnerving level of knowledge. He explains that he employed a technique from the bare-knuckle boxing era, deliberately taking the punch on the hardest part of his skull to break his attacker's fists. The champion taunts Nozaki, asking if he's surprised that his supposed finishing blow resulted in his own injury. Following this revelation, the two fighters stand apart, a tense silence settling over the clearing as they catch their breath. Both are breathing heavily, the physical toll of the battle evident on their faces. The goblin champion watches his opponent, while Nozaki clenches his fist, his expression grim. The champion breaks the silence, beginning a cold assessment of their mutual injuries. He lists Nozaki's wounds, a cut on the back, broken ribs, broken knuckles, and contrasts them with his own, a broken shoulder, impaired vision, and a spinning head. He concludes with a challenge. Now what will you do? He then clenches and unclenches his clawed hands, the scraping sound of his nails echoing slightly. He looks at Nozaki and asks if it is finally time to end their battle. Nozaki watches him, a flicker of a smile touching his lips. He thinks to himself that he knew the champion would come at him this way. With renewed determination, he accepts the challenge, thinking, all right, let's end this. As if in answer, the goblin champion lunges forward, closing the distance with surprising speed. He stands his ground, his eyes narrowed in concentration as he watches the attack approach. A thin line of blood trickles down from the wound on his forehead. He stood his ground as the goblin champion charged. The massive creatures face a mask of pure focus. In response, he clenched his right hand into a tight fist, knuckles whitening with the strain. As the champion's punch flew towards him, Nozaki didn't block or dodge. Instead, he moved in, catching the creature's wrist and forearm. He twisted his body, using the champion's own forward momentum to pull him off balance and expose his side. The champion's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing his features as his powerful attack was so easily neutralized. The creature glanced down at his captured arm, a moment of realization dawning. Nozaki, however, remained utterly focused on his counterattack. With his free hand, Nozaki jabbed forward, thrusting two fingers directly into the champion's left eye. The creature recoiled in sudden, sharp pain. Before the champion could recover, Nozaki drove a heavy kick into the inside of his opponent's thigh, crippling his stance. He immediately followed by stomping his heel down hard onto the champion's foot, pinning the beast in place. With his foe immobilized and disoriented, Nozaki pivoted, unleashing a final, devastating high kick aimed straight for the side of the champion's head. His face, streaked with grime and blood, was a mask of grim determination as he followed through with a decisive attack. The kick landed squarely against the goblin champion's head, the force of the impact undeniable. His opponent staggered, a choked gasp escaping his lips as the blow registered. The mighty creature's strength finally gave out, and he collapsed to his knees before Nozaki, who stood panting, his own energy nearly spent. With a final, heavy thud, the champion's body fell forward onto the dusty ground. He lay motionless. The duel concluded. Nozaki stood over his fallen foe, the silence of the aftermath settling around them. His own legs gave way, and he dropped to his knees, clutching his shoulder. He looked at the defeated warrior, questioning aloud if he had truly won. He acknowledged that of all the people he had fought until now, the champion was the strongest. He continued, his voice low and his face shadowed, confessing a deep, heartfelt respect for the creature. He declared him a real warrior. As the champion's life faded, Nozaki offered a final sentiment. "O warrior, may you rest well." While there can only be one hero in a tale, in this moment, both combatants were undeniably war. A desolate, rocky landscape stretches out, the ground cracked and barren under a pale sky. The area, likely a quarry or dried riverbed, is littered with the debris of a recent, violent struggle. Amidst the aftermath, a young adventurer lies defeated on the dusty ground. A grievous, dark wound mars his chest, and a heavy boot is planted firmly beside him, belonging to a figure standing victorious over his prone form. He looks up from the ground, his gaze fixed on the silhouetted figure looming above. With eyes wide in a mixture of fear and resignation, the wounded man weakly wonders if his ordeal is finally over. The victor is revealed to be Hitoshi Nozaki, his face bearing fresh cuts from the fight. He looks down with a grim expression, confirming the man's unspoken thought with a simple, "yeah," before adding a dark addition. "If you're not dead." His gaze drifts to the adventurer's chest, where a massive, blackened wound festers beneath a crude stitch. Acknowledging that the injury is beyond saving, Nozaki asks if the man wants him to deliver a final, merciful end. Instead of answering, the dying man musters his remaining strength. He looks up at Nozaki and poses a question that has clearly been tormenting him. "Why was I targeted?" He continues, his voice weak but urgent, warning Nozaki that other monsters with empty stomachs will soon be drawn to the scene. He implores Nozaki to kill him now, lest they both suffer a horrible death. The question triggers a memory in Nozaki. His mind flashes back to his first arrival at the Adventurers Guild, the day he met the brutish warrior Gauns. With a jolt, he realizes that this very man, the one now dying at his feet, was also there. The memory sharpens, revealing a past conversation. The nervous adventurer admits he saw Nozaki use flattery to join Gonza's party, then considered the strongest. Believing Nozaki to be a weakling who simply talked his way in, he confesses to spreading rumors among his own companions that Nozaki was an easy mark for an ambush. He stood over the dying man, listening as the adventurer continued his confession. The man explained that after the incident at the bar, they thought it was strange that Nozaki hadn't gone down easily, and they soon realized they had judged him wrongly. The adventurer's mind flashed back to that moment, recalling how Nozaki had used a technique they had never seen before to handle the situation with Gons so impressively. He admitted that even after realizing their misjudgment, his party's feelings shifted. From the depths of their hearts, they became scared. They feared what would happen if Nozaki, with his true strength, became a formal member of Gon's party and solidified his position. Because they didn't know what he was truly like, they concluded it would be better to kill him before he had the chance to get revenge. Nozaki listened to the final piece of the confession, his expression grim and unreadable. With his last breath, the man looked up at the sky, the dagger still protruding from his chest. "I'm an idiot," he lamented, his life fading away. Nozaki simply watched. He turned away from the body, reflecting on the consequences of his actions. He realized his carelessness in revealing his true strength had garnered unwanted attention from those around him. Later, lying on a rough bed, a sharp pain shot through his shoulder. He knew it was getting late, and he'd have to sleep in a tree for the night. But first, he had to loot the equipment from 8 bodies and harvest the monsters before they rotted. The pain forced him outside. Leaning against a tree under the starry sky, he winced, clutching his arm. He realized he would have to ask Claren to relocate his shoulder. His decision led him to a familiar timber-framed building. From within, a voice cried out in surprise. "What was that?" Inside, Claire spoke to him as he stood with his back to the entrance. She advised him that if he was going to come for treatment, he should do so when Belle was out shopping, as she was today. Before that, however, he had something else to say. As Claire tends to his injury, she makes an observation about the market, noting how the price of goblin materials has recently increased. His reaction is one of stunned realization. He mutters in disbelief, covering his mouth as he processes the information. He recalls a specific material they don't use, the jet black goblin eyeball, a component so rare it's almost never seen on the open market. Elsewhere, in a lavishly decorated room, a woman with a wreath in her hair confides in her companion. She explains that until now, her injuries have been so severe that she felt guilty and hesitated to visit brothels. But now, having sold a large amount of equipment, she has decided to indulge in a luxurious establishment. The concept of high-value rewards resonates with Nozaki. He puts the pieces together, a sly thought forming as he realizes that rare monster materials are worth 3 times the usual value. He remains silent, absorbing the implications. His silence prompts Claire to snap him out of his reverie, asking if he's even listening. He is lost in thought, calculating the potential wealth from the materials he gathered from the trash goblins and the goblin village, realizing that among them was an item of exceptional rarity. His thoughts are interrupted by Claire's practical advice. As the idea of healing magic enters his mind, she tells him that if he wants to recover more quickly after she resets his shoulder, he should go to the church to receive it. Startled, he stammers an affirmative response. With that, she acts, firmly setting his dislocated shoulder back into its socket. The mention of the church and healing magic sends his imagination running wild. He pictures Claire transformed into a glowing, holy figure in ornate vestments, shouting that she is about to perform the healing. He sweats, bracing himself for this imagined, intense ritual. The absurd fantasy quickly dissipates, replaced by a wave of self-reproach. As an image of the actual church comes to mind, he realizes his thoughts have gone astray, admitting to himself that it was his mistake. He looks down, thoroughly embarrassed by his own train of thought. He offers a silent, internal prayer, asking God to grant solace to the wounded, before conceding that it's his own fault for having such a dirty mind. His guilt-ridden thoughts conjure a vivid, frantic scene. A portly clergyman in ornate robes bellows for a divine healing. In this imagined moment, the clergyman lays his hands upon Nozaki's bandaged shoulder, a radiant light signifying the start of the magical treatment. The fantasy shatters as the reality of the pain hits him. Even in his mind, the thought of the healing process makes him sweat, his internal voice crying out that it hurts. 3 days later, having foregone the church's services, he touches his shoulder, now fully healed through natural recovery. He confirms to himself that the ordeal is finally done. He explains to an unseen companion that while magical healing is incredibly effective, speeding up regeneration to fix an injury instantly, the process itself is agonizing. The person he is speaking with is Al, who greets him as Yajin and asks if he is returning from his treatment. Al then reveals his own experience, mentioning he just finished a second round of treatments. He shares a rumor that only one session is truly necessary, but the church splits it up to charge more. As they walk, Al expresses relief that Nozaki is alive, but jokes they'll have to work him twice as hard now. Nozaki apologizes for getting injured so soon after they resumed working. Nozaki stops, his expression turning serious. He looks directly at Al and asks if they can gather everyone together. Soon after, the party is assembled. Nozaki and Al are joined by the burly Gons, the young Rise, and Mia, all turning their attention to Nozaki, awaiting his purpose for the meeting. The burly adventurer, Gons, stared back at him, his face a mask of disbelief. "What did you say?" he asked, unable to process the proposal. Nozaki stood his ground, his gaze unwavering as he repeated his declaration. "Let's break the level ceiling." Gons, however, had his own ideas. He explained that with another month or so of focused earning, combined with the money he'd already amassed, he would have enough for his own plan. He pressed on, arguing that they wouldn't get another chance like this. In his view, this was the key to resolving their most difficult problem, affording a black steel weapon to defeat a grade 4 monster. Nozaki leaned forward, gesturing for them to listen closely. Al, his expression serious, immediately questioned him, asking about the essential details of this plan. The entire party, Nozaki, Al, Gons, Rise, and Mia, sat in silence around the wooden table, their attention fixed on the speaker. After a moment, a low chuckle escaped Gons. Nozaki watched him, waiting for a verdict, and finally asked, "What do you think?" The sound then erupted into a booming, unrestrained laugh that echoed through the area. His laughter finally subsiding, Gons beamed with enthusiasm. "Ain't that the greatest plan?" he declared, turning to the armored adventurer. "Right, Al." But Nozaki's expression was stone. "Is that what you thought I'd say?" he asked, his voice flat. "It's absurd." His cryptic dismissal was met with a sharp, intrigued gaze from Kimin, who smirked. Things were becoming interesting. Nozaki's expression hardened with resolve. He looked at his companions and announced loudly that it was decided. Kimin acknowledged that Nozaki must have been busy researching a target during his recovery. With a confident smile, he cut to the chase, asking what their target was. Nozaki's eyes narrowed slightly. He confirmed that he had his eyes on one, beginning to reveal the subjugation target. He declared their objective, a grade 4 monster. The image of a stout, reptilian creature flashed through their minds. He specified the creature's name, a rock lizard. The beast was immense, its hide like stone, with a single, massive eye staring out from its craggy head. The revelation sent a jolt of excitement through Gons. He roared in approval, exclaiming that a rock lizard was a worthy challenge and that he was getting fired up. He declared that they would have a celebratory toast that night. And so, the time had come to test the party's strength. Gathered together, Nozaki, Kimin, Gons, and Rise raised their mugs high, cheering to their futures and the perilous hunt that Hitoshi Nozaki stands before a large, horned, bear-like creature perched atop a rocky outcrop. The beast appears calm, almost placid, as it sits and observes him. He turns his head slightly, cupping a hand to his ear as if listening for something in the distance, and calls out a simple yo. The call instantly provokes the beast. It lunges forward with a ferocious roar, its calm demeanor replaced by pure aggression, catching Nozaki by surprise. Without hesitation, he turns and flees down a narrow forest path, the massive creature bounding after him in hot pursuit. As he runs, his gaze briefly falls upon another strange creature of the forest, this one with a sharp, bird-like beak. Ignoring the distraction, he reaches the edge of a steep slope and leaps off, just as the horned beast closes in behind him. The creature, unable to halt its momentum, tumbles over the edge as well, curling into a ball as it plummets down the incline. From his landing spot further down, Nozaki watches the beast roll past. He offers a quick, almost indifferent thought. "I'm sorry for your loss." The tumbling beast crashes to a halt directly in the path of an armed party of adventurers. The burly Gons hefts his axe, while Kimin and a female knight in plate armor prepare to engage the disoriented creature. Surrounded and enraged, the creature lets out a furious roar. It is a crazy bear, a grade 3 monster. Its fur is known to be valuable, but this is because it is a brutally dangerous opponent. The horned bear, a creature the adventurers had previously ignored, now stands before them. Yet they see this not as a threat, but as a test. On AL's word, they have decided to subjugate it, reasoning that if they ever hope to defeat a grade 4 monster, they cannot shy away from a grade 3. Kimin observes that Gons and the others have changed. Gons confirms this shift in mindset, noting it has been a week since they began discussing how to break their level ceiling. He declares that since no one is injured, they should take on another request as soon as they return to the city. The phrase itself, "let's break the level ceiling," is just a few words. But for them, the act of saying it aloud carries a profound weight and meaning. This is because in the city of Rockcliffe, no one has ever managed to break this barrier, even among those who set forth in search of this new world. It is a known fact that 70 to 80% of adventurers in subnational groups remain stuck below this very ceiling. The reason for this widespread stagnation is that everyone shares the same ultimate goal, breaking the level ceiling and reaching level 20 to become a rank 5 adventurer. Only a chosen few attain this rank, and with it, the status, wealth, and fame of a true adventurer. Though the stories of why people become adventurers are quite diverse, each and everyone has their own personal history driving them forward. From a distance, Hitoshi Nozaki understands this all too well. He knows their stories. There are those given away to lessen the burden on their families, those who left their villages with revenge burning in their minds, those inspired by childhood heroes, and even the third children of nobles seeking to make a name for themselves. Nozaki reflects that all adventurers carry the smoldering thought, "I can't continue like this. I have to break the level ceiling." A bitter anger surfaces as he thinks to himself that it shouldn't have been this way for him. If only that bastard hadn't betrayed him, he would have done better. He understands that successful people like Gons and the others are no exception to this drive. For them, the scorching embers that smoldered incessantly have flared into a blazing inferno, ignited by the fuel of hope. This renewed passion is now undeniable. Kimin and Rise no longer see any reason to hide their ambition. Al has cut into his sleeping time to diligently gather information, while Kimin trains zealously whenever he has a spare moment. As Hitoshi Nozaki continued his observation, his thoughts focused on the adventuring party. Of all of them, the one who had changed the most was Gons. The man who now saw hope in breaking the level ceiling had become a totally different person. Previously, he was all brawn and no brains, having given up on thinking for himself and relying entirely on Al. He would squander his daily earnings on women and alcohol. Hitoshi considered this transformation with a grim satisfaction. He believed that, due to his own influence, the current Gons was like an improved, movie version of his former self. Because of this change, the constantly irritated and troublesome Gons was no more. Hitoshi watched as Gons carefully worked on a piece of equipment. Though perhaps still a bit dim-witted, he now actively searched for things he could be good at, revealing a serious, albeit clumsy man. With their various thoughts and renewed purpose, the party began completing requests at a rapid pace. Al defended with his shield, Rise loosed arrows, and Gons swung his axe with newfound vigor. Gons' focus manifested in a brutal test. His axe descended upon a beaked creature, slicing cleanly through its thick neck. Finally, the blade passed through the other side, severing the monster's head from its body in a single, perfect motion. And then, it was over. Gon stood over the bisected corpse, his new weapon having performed flawlessly. Kimin approached him from the side, his expression one of keen interest. "How is it, Gons?" he asked. "How do you feel about the test cut?" Gons could only stare, a bead of sweat tracing a path down his temple. He swallowed hard, his mind reeling. "Amazing," he uttered, his voice filled with pure awe at the power he now held. His party had finally acquired a black steel weapon. Gons reflected that it was the first time he'd had an axe that didn't break, even when he slammed it with all his might. Meanwhile, Hitoshi was at the Adventurers Guild building. As he stood near the counter, the village elder approached him. "Yo, old man," Hitoshi greeted him flatly. The elder observed that it was almost time for Hitoshi to leave. He chuckled, adding that he'd heard Hitoshi had done something reckless. Hitoshi, turning to leave the reception desk, simply stated he was off for the day. The elder continued, noting he'd heard Hitoshi plan to defeat a rank 4 monster using only a black steel axe, a weapon not typically suited for such a task compared to a sword or even an arrow. Hitoshi's surprise was evident as the elder confessed the truth. He had also tried to take on the challenge of breaking his own level ceiling once before, but had given up. He conceded that Hitoshi's decision to act quickly was correct, as hiding money attracts unwanted attention. The elder recalled his own past, how he and his teammates had saved up half the needed funds, only for the money to vanish from their safe house despite thorough planning. When Hitoshi asked if they were robbed, the elder clarified with a grimace. It wasn't a robbery. One of his own teammates, someone he considered a close friend, took the money and ran, leaving him utterly vexed. His story told, the elder's demeanor shifted to one of encouragement, urging Hitoshi to raise his head and go succeed. Internally, however, Hitoshi admitted the truth to himself. He was relieved. He was scared of the grade 4 monster and felt he wasn't of the right caliber for the fight. Unaware of Hitoshi's inner conflict, the elder waved goodbye, promising to prepare a celebratory toast for his return with his head held high. He stands and looks out from the building, his internal conflict giving way to a firm decision. He steels himself, declaring that it's time to go. He reflects for a moment that every adventurer must have their own story, their own reasons for being here. With his mind made up, he begins to prepare. His hands move with purpose, fastening the straps of his gear with a firm click and snap. He then secures his weapon, sliding the blade into its scabbard with a smooth, practiced motion. His preparations complete, he takes a decisive step, his boot landing firmly on the ground with a heavy thud. He steps outside to join the party assembled at the gate. The burly, axe-wielding Gons, the quiet, hooded boy, Rise, and a determined female knight clad in plate armor. The sun shines brightly in the sky above, marking the start of their expedition. Under the clear sky, the newly formed party of 4 walks away from the safety of the town's walls, heading into the wilderness. The burly adventurer, Gons, walks with a grim expression, his large axe resting on his shoulder, a silent testament to his readiness for battle. In contrast, the female knight beside him wears a confident, reassuring smile, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. As the party travels, the young boy, Rise, pulls his hood low. A faint, unsettling smile plays on his lips as they venture into perilous lands. His expression catches the eye of another adventurer, a bearded man observing their group. The man's gaze is steady as he forms a silent judgment about the eclectic. Under the cloak of night, a party of 5 adventurers gathers around a crackling campfire. The mood is heavy with anticipation, their faces cast in the flickering light and shadow of the surrounding cliffs. Kimin, his expression grim, breaks the silence. He declares that the battle on the morrow will be the one that decides everything. His voice carries over the desolate landscape as he announces they will review the battle plan against the rock lizard one final time. The strategy session begins. Kimin confirms the first step. As usual, Yajin will guide the enemy to the designated area, a role the bearded adventurer acknowledges. Kimin then shares his research, noting that while the creature hunts other monsters, there are no records of anyone successfully fighting it, demanding caution. The bearded man adds that all eyewitness reports agree it is sluggish. Kimin concludes the phase, stating that after it's baited, he and the bearded adventurer will jump in to stop it in its tracks, while Rise listens in silence. Hitoshi Nozaki, also known as Yajin, then turns his attention to the burly Gons. He states plainly that the only black steel weapon they possess is Gon's 2-handed axe, making him the only one capable of finishing their opponent. His gaze sharpens as he delivers a critical command to the others. They are to remain hidden and motionless, no matter what happens, until the 3 primary fighters create a decisive opening. Kimin underscores the severity of the order, his own eyes wide with intensity. He stresses that they must hold their positions, even if one of the vanguard were to be struck down. The weight of this grim possibility settles upon Rise and the bearded adventurer, their faces reflecting the seriousness of the moment. Gons, tasked with the final blow, stares ahead with unwavering focus, uttering a single, resolute word, understood. With the plan finalized, the party sets out at dawn, walking together down a barren, rocky path toward their confrontation. In a small village, a local guide points toward the horizon for the benefit of the armored adventurer, Al. Standing nearby, Hitoshi and Kimin listen as the guide confirms their target. The person who provided the information they seek is in the village ahead. Following this lead, the party of 4 adventurers finds a high vantage point. They spread out and survey the vast, rocky wilderness stretching out before them. Their gaze sweeps across an endless expanse of jagged, barren peaks under a pale sky. From their position, Hitoshi points toward a distant formation, but Al, his view partially obscured by his own large shield, calls out that he cannot see the next landmark. Unseen by the party, the great rock lizard lies perfectly still, its body indistinguishable from the surrounding stone formations. Sensing they're close, Kimin turns to Hitoshi with a grave expression and issues a quiet command. Prepare for battle. A booted foot steps forward, pressing firmly onto the rocky ground as the group begins its final, cautious approach. Hitoshi and Rise proceed along the treacherous terrain, with Rise observing that the chosen route appears to be passable. Before they advance further, the party halts. Kimin kneels and begins mixing something in the dirt with a wet, squelching sound, prompting a confused look from Hitoshi. Hitoshi asks what he is making, while Gons recoils, complaining that it stinks. Kimin calmly explains that since they couldn't find a suitable herb, He is creating a paste from mud and the rock lizard's own excrement to erase their scent. He offers to help Hitoshi, suggesting they could search for a proper herb instead, noting that using excrement would be particularly unpleasant for Gons. With his arms crossed, Gons impatiently tells them to hurry up. Hitoshi, however, curtly tells Kimin to shut up. He stares intently, instructing Kimin not to hold back with the application. He stresses that their lives depend on remaining undetected by the enemy, even telling Kimin to smear the foul paste on his face. Following the command, Kimin begins slathering the paste onto Gons' head. From a distance, the whole party finishes their preparations, their voices echoing in the rocky terrain, a cry of disgust, a simple confirmation, and finally, a call asking if everyone is ready. The group stands ready. Al, gripping his axe and shield, offers a final, determined encouragement, declaring that they can succeed. Gons, Hitoshi, and Rai stand with him, their expressions set for the coming battle. With their preparations complete, the battlefield comes into view. Far below, the rock lizard rests among the conical rock formations, unaware of the lone figure of Hitoshi perched high above, observing his target. He looks down at his own hand, noticing its trembling. A wave of nerves washes over him as he realizes the pressure of the moment. To steady himself, he takes a slow, deep breath. He releases it in a sharp gust, his focus instantly sharpening. The nervousness vanishes, replaced by an intense, predatory stillness. Now centered, he taps his foot against the rock's edge, a quiet signal of readiness. All right, he murmurs to himself. With that final confirmation, he begins his descent, moving silently down the rock face, closing the distance to his quarry. He clenches a small rock in his hand, his grip firm. He then draws back his arm, preparing to hurl the stone to draw the creature's attention. From a safe distance, the rest of his party watches. Kimin, Gons, and Al are crouched and ready, while the boy, Rise, sits apart, observing the scene unfold. Kimin's gaze is sharp, while Gons and Al stand poised, their expressions a mixture of tension and readiness. Suddenly, Rise's eyes go wide with alarm. He shouts a warning, coming, as the plan enters its next phase. His shout coincides with Hitoshi breaking cover, sprinting directly towards the creature's den with heavy, determined strides. The gambit is successful. The massive rock lizard is drawn out from its lair, and the hunting party immediately moves to surround it in the open, rocky terrain. The creature's true scale is revealed as it towers over the adventurers. It is a walking mountain of stone and flesh, and the men position themselves around it, ready for battle. Hitoshi is the first to act, closing the distance and striking the beast squarely on the side of its head with the heavy pommel of his sword. The impact is jarring. The lizard's eye flies open in shock and pain, and it unleashes a deafening, guttural roar. The creature's rocky hide deflects a sword strike from a bearded adventurer with a metallic ting, the blade failing to find purchase. The bearded man analyzes the situation, concluding that the monster's primary attacks are its bite and using its front legs to pin prey. He resolves to focus on dodging and delivering powerful punches for now. He decides to leave the main assault to Al and Kimin, who stand ready with their weapons drawn. In response, Al lunges forward, thrusting his sword with a sharp sound towards a gap in the creature's armored plating. His blade pierces the monster's joint. The bearded adventurer watches in shock, realizing Al found a weak spot. He had expected a protracted battle, but now sees that attacking the joints with thinner armor might slow the beast down. The rock lizard plants its massive foot as Al holds his ground, his sword still embedded in its limb. Suddenly, the creature's joint begins to extend in an unnatural way. Al stares in disbelief while the bearded adventurer shouts in alarm, questioning what is happening. The limb, now elongated and flexible, wraps tightly around Al's arm and shield, trapping him completely. Kimin watches from a distance, his face a mask of pure shock as he sees his comrade ensnared. The creature whips its extended limb, violently flinging both Al and Kimin into a nearby body of water. Submerged below, Hitoshi witnesses the chaos and shouts their names in alarm. He stands before the massive rock lizard, his back to the viewer. Reaching out, he places a hand firmly on the creature's rocky hide, causing a low rumble to emanate from the beast. His foot stomps down, planting him solidly on the uneven ground as his eye flashes wide with a sudden, sharp realization. In response, the rock lizard throws its head back, its cavernous mouth stretching wide as it unleashes a deafening roar. The creature's monstrous form is cast into a stark, intimidating silhouette against the light. Hitoshi, however, is not intimidated. His gaze is fixed, his features set in grim determination. He drives his shoulder into the lizard's side, bracing himself against its immense bulk with all his strength. The scene shifts to an impossible perspective. Hitoshi is seated atop the rock lizard, riding it as it begins to scale a sheer rock wall. As he holds on, a bearded adventurer in armor watches the ascent from a nearby ledge, his expression one of utter disbelief. The man recognizes the immense power required, noting that the level ceiling is exceedingly high. Hitoshi, clinging to the beast, turns his head, his own surprise evident as he spots the